Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our May 9th, 2022 City Council meeting. Chairman Massaro is at his grandson's graduation this evening, so I will be filling in for him this evening. I'd also like to make a comment before we start that former Councilman Brent Watt, Robin's brother, who was passed untimely a few years back. Today is his birthday. I'd like to wish him a happy birthday. And also we have our Republican colleague Steve Johnstone's birthday today as well. I'd like to wish him a happy birthday as well. If I could have the clerk please call the roll.
Councilman Gary Donovan.
Councilman Gary Donovan, Councilman at Large, present.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, Council at Large here.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky, 1st District, present.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite.
Councilwoman Melly Garthwaite, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Sarah Akbali.
Councilwoman Sarah Akbarali, 3rd District, present.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano.
Councilman Mitchell Galignano, 4th District, present.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton.
Councilwoman Robin Watt Hamilton, 5th District, present.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker.
Councilwoman Catherine Tucker, 7th District, present.
Councilman Victor Boras is absent. Councilman Robert Bruno.
Councilman Robert Bruno, 9th District, present.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone.
Councilman Stephen Johnstone, 10th District, present.
Chairman Peter Mazzaro is absent, and acting chair Ronald Quagliani.
Councilman Ron Quagliani, Council at Large, present. Thank you, Stacy. We'll enter into public comment at this time. It looks like a seasoned room. I think you know all the rules, but it's a one-time speaking rule. Please raise your hand to be recognized. Come to the podium, address the council. We ask you to have proper decorum and state your comments or your concerns. Mr. Frazzalone?
Good evening, Paul Frazzalone, 19 Bloom Street. I can't believe how many people actually watch this on YouTube, because last 2 weeks ago I made a couple comments, and that night while I was sitting here I got a bunch of feedback, and also the next day. I got a couple ideas. 2 weeks ago I brought up the idea of, since the Haven project is somewhat stalled, all the demolition of houses haven't even gone out to bid yet. I made a remark in regards of, I think that would be a perfect spot for the brewery. And the reason why I said that, it's right off the highway. It's got a waterway like Stony Creek where you can bring your boats and dock your boats, go into the restaurant, go across the street to Lorenzo's restaurant, or so on. And there was a couple of people's concerns that there's no way you're gonna be able to put a dock there because it would have to be dredged. And he's somewhat right. It hasn't been dredged in a long time. But if any of you have lived in West Haven, as long as me, Gary Donovan, Colleen, and Mr. Bruno, and Ronnie, all know that Connecticut Refining was on Water Street. National Oil was on Water Street. There were tank farms there. The barge will come and fill up Connecticut Refining's tanks and National Oil's tanks right on where I would think the best spot for the brewery is. I'm in favor of the brewery. I just think the conference center property, to me, it's inadequate parking. I just don't think it's the right fit down there with the potential of a 30 to 40,000 square foot manufacturing plant. Now, the manufacturing plant would be cool to watch, see the stills and everything, but nobody's realizing the CHAG is distributed all over the United States. Nobody's come forward and said how many trucks a day are coming down Kelsey Avenue, going and leaving from the place to distribute this beverage. So that's one of my concerns. And there's definitely no parking. I mean, there's rumors that the city's gonna allow them to use the Board of Ed parking lot, which I said previously, that should be a no answer right off the bat, because this city has turned down people for development or stores with inadequate parking. So that's one of my concerns. Now let's go. Why do we always have to have negative press? You know, we're just getting over all this money, things are the money missing and stuff like that. Now we got an illegal dump. You know, a transfer station, whatever you want to call it. I tell you right now, whoever authorized to have that debris brought there should be fired. Fired, suspended, or what? We keep on getting these black guys left or right. I mean, it's like a Rocky match over here in West Haven. It doesn't make sense. I've asked this, going back to Richard Bohr, that the city of West Haven needs a transfer station. And then a couple of administrations are like, well, we got to have a consultant. You don't need to have a consultant. I go to Milford Dump. Milford Transfer Station is run a class act, okay? Mr. Bruno might have been there since he has a business in Milford. You have different bins for different items. You go in, I pay non-residence fee, or I use one of my customers' addresses. And you got different bins, and you got a big hopper. This is what West Haven needs, a real good transfer station. Place for transfer station really should be on Front Avenue. I know you're redistricting all that, but if it's done right, like Milford's transfer station, even the one behind Home Depot in Orange, it's gonna save the taxpayers money, it's gonna be less stuff on the curb. Believe it or not, you know how many people on a Saturday go to the transfer station? All at Branford, you know, Orange, Woodbridge, they utilize it. And the politicians, election time, they all hang out at the entrance of some of these transfer stations. So we don't need to hire consultants. We don't need to drag this on. Just go talk to Mayor Blake and sit down and see how the finances are run with their transfer station. Like I said, it's run fabulous. It's always clean. It's a little off the beaten path, but that's you know, it's a good spot for it. You know, with the Haven project, I know the mayor and a couple other people went walking it for some blight. You know, 10,000 people a month or more walk by the conference center all for the last 2 years with a blue tarp, a brown tarp, a green tarp on the roof. That's blight. That is blight. The city can't even maintain their own personal property that we own, and then we're going to go after other people and homeowners for blight. The conference center, you know, previous administrations that ran the conference center, we were getting by, but we were making money. Okay, Lynn Jagway did an awesome job. You know, like I run the IA Club. We rent out the facility. The conference center was for people that rent out, that wanted to be near the water. It was a great spot. It was just, maybe had to be restructured the way it was run, but the other two previous administrations kept it going. This administration just shut the door, closed it, with no real reason. I mean, you go in there now, the roof's leaking, the window sills are all rotten, above the windows is rotten. I mean, I was there earlier just because I seen two kids running away from the building, pulled the alarm, so the fire department came, police department came, and I had to give a report. I called it in. But we need to start taking care of our own property before we go after other people. Now, I don't know if there has been a closing on Style School yet. I know we supposedly sold that, Thompson and the building in Allentown, because I seen the people that cut the grass at the Haven were cutting the grass at Style School today. So it might be a coincidence that they got hired to cut Style School. It's just kind of weird how that corresponded today. But if the Haven project is stalled, I say we eminent domain the property back. Okay? If that's what it takes to turn this project around, you drive by West Haven, you got the old Atlas building. You're on the highway, you're stuck in traffic, you look over, you got the old Atlas building. Deteriorating, that should be blight. That's definitely blight. That's more blight than the Haven project. At least the Haven project knocked buildings down, they keep the front of the grass cut on First Avenue. But the Atlas building is 100% blight, between all the graffiti and stuff that's on it. But I really think that we should eminent domain the Haven project. Let's play hardball with these people. If they're not going to come forward and come to the city with applications, with bid processes for the rest of the demolition, let's have our attorney write up a letter. We're going to start eminent domain. I think that'll be a great idea. Shut up or ship out. It can be done. So let's not say we can't do it. But we got to play hardball with these people. Our town, looks terrible. I know we got the funding, the $5 million for Beach Street, but when's it getting done? When is it getting done? There's more potholes there. You know, when's it getting done? That project is holding up development on Chicks, and it's holding up development on the Debonair. Because these people don't want to invest millions of dollars not knowing when the street's gonna get done. We need to know that. Now, you know, I just, as council people, what makes a good council person? A good council person, I'm up here, I'm from 19 Bloom Street, there's other people that come and speak. You guys jot down information. Can it just be once that our council people, and I'm not picking on my councilwoman, I just walked in with her tonight, and she's new. Can you get back to us? Can you write a letter? Hey, Paul, hey, Mike, I looked into what you brought up at the city council meeting. This is what I found. Because I know you can't have dialogue, but we come here, we take time away from our loved ones to come here and speak on behalf of our fellow residents. And all we want is answers, and I know you can't give them to them tonight, but how hard is it to write a letter and say, hey, Paul, thanks for your comments. Mike, thanks for your comments. Dave, thanks for your comments. Andy, thanks for your comments. And this is what we found, or we're still looking into it. If you could be transparent to us, I think that's going to alleviate a lot of FOI reports and stuff like that. We need to, we want to know what's going on. So, just real quick, Conference Center, eminent domain, the Haven project. Let's get that ball rolling. Let's not wait for them. Let's be proactive on this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Frozzalone, for your comments. There is a public lands update later on in the agenda to update us on several public lands projects that we approved over the last year or so. So that's coming up later in the agenda. Is there someone else from the public that would like to speak? Pat?
Pat Bollettieri, 215 West Walk. I wrote my letter to Governor Lamont supporting the move of West Haven to Tier 4. Mayor Rossi, I believe that you are a good person, but as the CEO of this city, you have presided over an epic failure, and City Council has been feckless. City Council passed a motion last month to start an investigation of city finances, and Mayor Rossi supports the investigation, so what's the holdup? You don't need an outside attorney to assemble the committee. Also last month, City Council unanimously passed a vote of no confidence in the mayor. And a few days later, the two of you who made and seconded the original motion did a complete about-face and said that you support the mayor. Was that all for show? The treasurer is another check and balance. Our treasurer, who is the second signatory on checks, said that his role is just ceremonial. No, it's not. The city charter says before affixing his signature to any check, the treasurer shall satisfy himself that such check represents the payment of a duly authorized obligation of the city, and his signature is pre-printed. Another charter violation is of the section which says no member of the council shall assume any other office of profit under the government of the city of West Haven. You have failed to carry out your fiduciary duties, and you have proven that West Haven has neither the ability nor the will to manage its own affairs, so we need to be Tier 4. Poor decision-making has been around for decades. In 2015, the city threw its own residents under the bus when over 50 families, small businesses, and a church had to flee their properties to make way for the Haven Shopping Center. And 7 years later, the Haven is a wasteland. The traditions of fraud, waste, financial abuse, self-dealing, nepotism, and incompetence have reached their apex under the administration of Mayor Nancy Rossi. Let's begin with the arrest of Michael DeMassa and others for financial malfeasance related to the outright theft of hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was very poor judgment to give Mr. DeMassa a virtual carte blanche to approve COVID relief payments. With this unfettered authority, Mr. DeMassa enriched himself, his friends, and his relatives with a string of fraudulent payments for work that was never performed. In response, the state commissioned a forensic audit which found that out of a COVID relief budget of approximately $1.1 million, almost $900,000 was misspent. This was over and above the $600,000 stolen by Mr. DeMassa and his associates. And this was a limited audit that only examined a single bucket of expenditures. At the Tier 4 level, the state of Connecticut should immediately commence an audit of all West Haven expenditures going back at least 5 years. Among the findings of the Cohn-Resnick audit are a lack of financial controls, lack of separation of duties, lack of proper vetting of vendors, and payroll records kept by employees on scraps of paper. Mayor Rossi has had 5 years to correct the deficiencies found in the forensic audit, which were also pointed out by the city's regular audit firm year after year. The audit also identified a situation where virtually anyone could place an order. West Haven can't even manage its vendor file. Vendor file maintenance is a simple, routine, but important clerical function that is a responsibility of any accounts payable department. Yet in West Haven, even this elementary function was mismanaged. Only a small portion of the city's vendors have their tax IDs on file. This means that valid 1099s can't be sent, resulting in a lack of tax reporting and possible federal fines for West Haven. MARB has repeatedly asked for certain controls to be put into place. West Haven responded with obstinate noncompliance. You continue to fight the people that are trying to help us. Key funded positions were not timely filed, and key people were shifted from post to post to put out fires. This is an invitation to fraud. The finance department needed a complete makeover, and a few years ago we were subject to a computer ransomware attack. You didn't cooperate with the MARB. We have the city attorney on a hot mic speculating on filing an injunction to fight Tier 4. Why? Why do we keep fighting? Mayor Rossi, you were asked about this injunction at your town hall meeting on May 2nd. Filing an injunction is irresponsible. It wastes the taxpayers' money, and it's a slap in the face to a process that has already given us 5 years to make things right. Let the Tier 4 process play out. Let's stop fighting the MARB and start following its advice. Our own audit firm dropped us. This is not a surprise. Their reputation is on the line because they attest to the reliability of our financial statements. But you can't rely on our financial statements because there are unbooked invoices. The MARB report states the discovery of fiscal year 2018 invoices paid in fiscal year 2019 was brought to OPM's attention by the independent auditor during an audit closing meeting. To date, the resolution of the underlying cause has not been verified. As a result, as recently as January 2022, the city's former finance director reported that unpaid fiscal year 2021 invoices were still being received and processed by the finance department. Fiscal year 2018 was not the first time the city's financials needed to be restated, end quote. Not only can our financial statements not be relied upon, but our checkbook balance can't be relied upon either. The MARB report goes on to state the unfortunate and costly consequences of failure of the city to acknowledge deficiencies and to take remedial action are documented in detail in the Cohn-Resnick audit. The findings in the Cohn-Resnick report extend beyond the use and management of COVID relief funds. You violate the charter, and now you want to change the charter. You forgot about the committee that you assembled in 2018 that worked for 2 years. You wasted their time. They reported to you, and you complained that you didn't understand what they did. They did exactly what you told them to do. And now you want to convene another committee. I suggest that you read and study what was already presented. Tier 3 oversight did not rescue West Haven because West Haven did not cooperate. The worst thing is that the lies, the obfuscation, the excuses, the talking out of both sides of your mouth still continue. West Haven is not capable of fixing itself. A Tier 4 designation will help prevent any further wheel spinning and financial losses.
Thank you, Mrs. Bolletary, for your comments. Ms. Weinstein?
Hi, my name's Rich Hebert. I live at 166 Bloom Street, and I agree with some of the things that Paul said here. And one of the things that I noticed, whatever's going on, we get sort of fluff as answers. Are there written procedures for every department? Are those being enforced? And one of the things that's coming up now is an ethics committee. It's nice to have an ethics committee, but is there a written procedure and conditions of what the ethics committee is supposed to do? And is that presented to, say, you council folks or department heads as to what they're supposed to do and how to proceed? It seems very fuzzy from what's been presented so far. And just the fact that this person is going to be appointed by the mayor is sort of a conflict of interest. I mean, if you own a business and you're on the council, you have to recuse yourself from voting on certain subjects. And it's the same thing with procedures that are going to affect us all. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hebert, for your comments. Ms. Weinstein?
Good evening. Paige Weinstein, 20 Platt Avenue. In the last 2 weeks, Mayor Rossi has been interviewed by WPLR and WTNH. In the TNH interview, Mayor Rossi explained that Michael DeMassa was the administrative assistant for the city council. She further explained that DeMassa worked independent of the mayor's office and actually worked for the city council office. In the PLR interview, Mayor Rossi stated that she did not give Michael DeMassa access to the COVID funds alone. It was approved by the whole council, quote unquote. While this is deferring blame, it also brings to question the amount of responsibility that should be placed at the feet of the past city council and the returning senior members of this council. Is the council actually responsible for giving Michael DeMassa the opportunity to steal $1.2 million? I have never heard the words transparency and accountability used more than since I started paying attention to the West Haven City Administration. My father used to tell me that actions speak louder than words. Unfortunately, the actions of the mayor and certain council members do not validate the definitions of those words. The residents of the city are angry. I believe there is an overwhelming feeling that the council and the mayor are not looking out in the best interest of the residents. In today's world of social media, whether we're talking about this town council meeting being streamed or the way it is Facebook page, people are talking, engaging in dialogue, and becoming more well-informed. Councilman Quagliani and Councilwoman Hosky stated to the West Haven Voice that the council's investigative probe is still in the formative stage with the who and the how still to be determined. I understand that in the spirit of transparency, the council is considering adding a few residents to take part in the investigation. Actions speak louder than words. In a show of transparency, I formally request your approval to sit on that subcommittee. My past and current work responsibilities encompass all skills I believe necessary to be an asset to that subcommittee, not limited to experience with budgets, purchase requests, bill paying, and payroll. I have an experience in owning a successful West Haven business for over 30 years, a second business in Hartford for the past 8 years. Prior to that, I was the Director of Human Resources for the law firm of Tyler Cooper and Alcorn in 3 Connecticut locations. And prior to that, I was the Sales and Marketing Manager for Eastern Airlines at Bradley Airport. I am observant, I am intuitive, and I am a woman of integrity. I have passed background checks both as a state of Connecticut foster parent and as a registered gun owner. Most important, I am not a vendor of the city, nor have I received any money from the city. I do not sit on any city committee, and there is absolutely no conflict of interest. I have a copy of my resume and signed ethics form for each council person tonight. May I approach and submit?
You could pass it there, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Weinstein. Mr. Kelly?
Good evening, council members, acting chair, Mayor Rossi. My name is Leo Kelly. I live on Seaview Avenue, West Haven. I am the tree warden for the city. I'm here specifically tonight to talk about a grant that has been awarded to the city entitled the Urban Forestry Equity Through Capacity Building Grant. This was done through efforts of our grant coordinator. And I'm here to talk specifically about the award being presented to the city, one of 4 organizations that received the grant award in the state in the first go-around. The grant was for $10,000, but there was a matching fund for $10,000 that had to be included in on that application, and that is urgently up front with the finalizing the Department of Environmental and Energy Protection providing us with this loan, and I'm just asking the council to be aware of that as time matters in us receiving the hard-worked effort for this $10,000. And also another, just to move forward just a little bit, I am working with the coordinator to project future grant applications dealing with our urban forest that could be upwards of $30,000. We're working on that. We will begin in the fall of this year and expect success in January 2023. The amount of loans that we'll be requesting will approach $30,000. So I'm asking the council to consider putting that $30,000 on note so that we can also use it as matching funds when we will obtain. I'm confident that we will obtain the funding that will be provided to us through the efforts of our grant writer and others. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for your comments. Mr. Hickey? Paul, yeah, just juggle that mic there. Paul, just no, it's that one.
This one?
Yeah. Okay. All right, Mr. Hickey.
Michael Hickey, 32 Bungalow Lane. Everybody's got something to say. You see, we're gonna have, the city council is gonna investigate. All right? You do understand that the Democratic Party is in damage control mode. All right? All hands on deck to save the Democratic Party. You can't investigate yourselves. You can't do it. I told you before. Take a vote. Send it to the Attorney General. He has an army of people that do exactly what needs to be done in this city. You don't need to do it yourself. The people aren't going to trust you. We don't trust the city any longer. Mike didn't break into the finance director's office and blow a safe and steal $1.1 million. It literally was handed out to him by checks through the finance office. Why? Any person that sits in the third floor office doesn't get readouts, I don't understand. You should be getting regular readouts for payroll and stuff on a quarterly basis. Non-referrals, the things that don't come up all the time, like jobbers and suppliers and stuff like that, should have a monthly going across your desk. And you should be checking it. And you get your liner there and you check them off and you call up the finance director, anything that got cut, a check, and tell them I want to see the paperwork. Because if a check has been cut, then all the paperwork is in line and in order. It takes a whole 5 minutes from the walk from one side of the office to the other. Just pull it out of the file, here it is. None of that was done for a very, very long time, even though the charter absolutely required it. Not the new charter that I voted for, the old charter. So it's not something that nobody's not knowingly or if you're sitting on this city council and you haven't read the charter, shame on you. That's the first thing you should do. All right? You can't do this. I don't need to take a vote of confidence when it comes to the taxpayers. I read it loud and clear wherever I go. Nobody trusts City Hall anymore. How much money walked out of this town, and we want to know. Because at least we can go back 5 years. We can nail all those and set an example. Because I said it before and I meant what I said, and I go to sleep knowing and believing what I say. This is not the first time this has happened. He was too confident to do this, which means he knew that it had been done before. There was people in this city hall that knew how easy it is to shake out. I always sat there and wondered, how can we wind up with a balanced budget that Jews pass and everything's okay, including money for things that might come along, but we always wind up $1 million, $2 million short, $3 million short. We wind up in a deficit. I remember more years being in a deficit than in a plus or even breaking even. Nobody questioned why that's happening. You had a balanced budget. How can you wind up in a deficit? I can understand, all right, we had a bad snowstorm, we're out $150,000 that we didn't see coming. But there's other expenses out there you can draw from the people that didn't use that money to fill that gap. See, I'm not as dumb as I look, all right? We worked the shop. We had $250,000 to keep multi-million-dollar machines running. That's all we got for the year. And we had to account for that money. We didn't say, oh, well, we ran out of it because the boss and the owner wasn't interested. You had better explain why you ran out of it. And you better explain big time. This is no good. As soon as I read this, I knew exactly what's going on. Just like you got the ethic board. What do you need an ethic board for? Nobody follows it anyways. All right? You got people that are taking money out of this town and getting businesses and getting jobs and stuff they're not even supposed to. Because the ethics says you're not allowed to. So what do you need an ethics board for? Because you don't follow it anyways. That's why you can't check yourself. Because there's too many people that got a lot of explaining to do. You can't hire a private lawyer. He's not going to have the power to the Attorney General and the people he sends down with the subpoena power, with warrants, right? With people that have to come in and sit and they have to talk to them, whether they want to or not. A private attorney doesn't have that power. And if you understand anything about unions, they will let you know that. Only the Attorney General and the muscle he sends down has that kind of power. And that's exactly the kind of power you need. They need to walk into that finance office, walk into those safes, or any place else they want, and grab any papers they want. They can get on that phone and call anybody that works for this city and tell them, you better show up X amount of time, if not, there'll be a warrant for your arrest. That's how it works. Because if not, the unions, they don't say nothing. There's that old saying, and you're a cop. All right? You have the right to remain silent. And any fool that doesn't is a fool. Unless he's forced to. Let's do this and do this right. Listen to me and listen to me well. I watched you last Sunday, Mr. Mayor, and you didn't say anything you have been saying before. Understand what you're saying. You're telling the whole world, I'm the most qualified person to stay here, but you let $1.1 million walk out of the city that you didn't even know about until September 27th. I'm still wondering how come our auditor took a hike. Where's the transparency in this town? Why did they just decide they don't want to do anything with this town anymore? 5 minutes. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not that dumb. I pretty much can guess what they said. You lied to us. And they walked. Because they're responsible as well. But you can't figure anything if you don't have the paperwork, and that problem with this town is there is no paperwork. One guy does a job, Whoever is signs off, and just before the check is due, it conveniently makes it to the finance office before anybody can check anything. Do you understand why the state has a 6-month grace period on any jobber that works for the state of Connecticut, and they have to agree to that? Because they check the paperwork, and if the paperwork's not in line, you don't get a check. Simple as that. The inspectors, everything else, everything down the line. When the papers were all there and everything's okey-dokey and signed off by all the right people, then the check is cut, and only then. This town just passing out money like Grant took Richmond. That's my money. I can't go down my streets without dodging either cars because I don't want to fall into potholes. I get streets that get paved that have permanent potholes because nobody's going out there making sure the manhole covers are level with the street grade. But you paid the man for the asphalt, and he didn't do the job right. That's my money. I own a stinking little postage stamp for a house I'm paying almost $6,000 a year for. I get literally, other than my garbage picked up, no services. Other than that, we got to pray that they might pick up the leaf bags. The last ones were out there for 3 weeks. All right? I got to beg people that are cutting checks, that are taking home payroll checks with benefits, and I got to hope that they show up to do a job. In a private corporation, that would never happen. Never. I watched my boss fire a guy because he was 10 minutes late for work. He did it once, he did it twice, the third time he told him, don't even bother punching in, you're done. I don't like talking to myself. Straighten out your act. I want to see this city council take a vote, get an AG, send it to the AG, and get the man in the power down here to do the job and do it right. You're talking to a police officer right there. They know the rules, and he knows them better than anybody else. He didn't get to be the chief of police because he was stupid.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey, for your comments. Is there anyone else from the public? Ms. Gregorio?
Good evening, everybody. Michelle Gregorio, 26 Fairview Avenue. So most of you that have been on the council for a while know that I make an annual appeal to all of you to look at the budget, sharpen your pencils, go deeper. If this isn't the year that you do it, I don't know when you will, okay? We just had an audit that showed that even the general fund was abused. We had our auditors walk away. You all need an answer as to why our auditors walked away from doing an audit, okay? An auditor's responsibility is to test what happens with our spending, see if there's any discrepancies, see what needs to be addressed and fixed. For an auditor to walk away before the audit was completed, there should be a huge red light for you guys, okay? Huge. If you don't have an answer, you should get one as to why they walked away. Marb wants to take us to Tier 4. If that isn't another signal why you should do a deeper dive into the budget, I don't know what else is. Please, it is your responsibility, representatives of this city, where our taxes have been raised over the last 3 years, where we've gotten millions of dollars from the state to run this city, where funds have been misspent and pointed out that they have been misspent. It is your responsibility to do a deeper dive into this budget, give the taxpayers relief, show some integrity with this budget, and question every single line. Get the detail that you need to make a decision. Do not accept this budget as face value. Do not move around line items, okay? That's not going to solve the problem. The taxpayers, as many people have said, we are hurting, okay? We may have people coming here from New York because it looks attractive. We're on the shore. Taxes are a hell of a lot cheaper in West Haven than they are coming out of New York. That doesn't solve the problem. The problem is the responsibility of this council to make sure that this budget is properly presented and that every single dollar on every line you have a complete accounting for, okay? I don't know how else to beg. I know every year I beg to sharpen the pencils. This year, you have enough of information and enough of things that have happened behind the scenes and in front of the scenes to make you get that work done. And again, many of us have offered help. I'm not on the Board of Finance anymore. I'd be more than happy to help anybody with anything if you want to do some analysis, all right? Thank you again for doing this. Thank you for, please, to take a look into this, and let's get this done. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gregorio, for your comments. Mr. Charney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Aaron Charney, 146 Union Ave. I'm coming up here tonight to talk about the Haven. It's nice to see city officials down at the Haven site. I just don't know what walking down Water Street did. Anytime you want, just let me know. I will walk with you down First Ave, Richards Place, Main Street in that area, Bayview, and we'll talk to the residents. I'll schedule a neighborhood meeting. I know many residents over there who want answers. And instead of just walking down Water Street for a photo op, let's talk to the residents. They put up with this for long enough, dealing with blight across the roads. And now we hear, again, we're considering blight fines. I sat here and we were told the city was considering blight fines years ago. Stop considering it, do it. What are we waiting for? And the biggest blight down there are the buildings. And I'm always told we can't knock down the buildings because they'll come off the tax rolls. Well, I looked up the property cards of every property down there, also the tax bills for the last 2 years down there. And if you look at First Ave, Richards, Water Street, Bayview, and Main Street down there, any plot that still has a building on it. In 2019, those properties paid out $263,003.60 in taxes. That's what they paid to the city on those properties. 2020, they paid $119,435.20. That's a decrease of $143,568.40. A decrease of about 55%. What property in the city has decreased 55% in the last year? I do real estate law. I could tell you property in town has not devalued in the last year or over that period of time. In fact, it increased dramatically. Did these builders, did the developer appeal their assessments? Is that what occurred here? Because if you look at the properties, just the buildings on the property themselves, removing the land aspect, the city's only collecting to itself, without the fire district, about it's $21,308.14 a year in taxes they're collecting on those properties, specifically with houses still on them. That's not a lot. Like, I'm sure we can find that somewhere in the budget and let these neighbors down there live without this blight across the road. I just don't understand. What's the argument there? If that's what we are collecting from those properties, why can't we knock down those houses? And the first thing I noticed when I looked at the property cards is the old Nick's property. I looked at the property card, and under all the buildings, it's zeroed out. I could tell you, I drive past that property twice today. There's still a building on that site. For some reason, the city thinks there's no building there. So I don't know who should look into that, but someone should look into that, because that's missed tax revenue. I just don't, it just seems like I'm always told our part of town has to suffer through this. I'm always told, I've been told by other council people in other districts, we can't do anything down there because we need that tax revenue. But my numbers today show it's really not that significant of tax revenue. We could find that somewhere in the budget and let these people live in peace. Have an open field across from their property until the developer finally comes before you guys. I still don't understand why they haven't come before you guys in ages. When I sat up here, I put a sunset to closing Water Street because I feared the developer, once they got that street, would never come before you guys ever again. That was the last carrot you had in this situation. And now you see this developer, where are they? They're radio silent. Who's communicating from the city to them? How often? What are they saying back? Let us know. We've been patient long enough. So please, whoever in the city, I don't know if it's Chris Soto, Lear Tiernan, who is in contact with the developer, Get them here. Ask them why they're not knocking down these buildings. Get them to give us a timeline. It's been long enough. How much longer do they need? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charney, for your comments. Anyone else from the public like to address the city council? For a second time, anyone from the public like to address the city council? For a third time, anyone from the public like Mr. Ricchio?
David Ricchio, 56 York Street, West Haven. I sat on the city council with 3 members that are on this dais when the Havens project came in. We were excited that a major impacting project was coming to West Haven. Although we had concerns with how we were obtaining that project, we all agreed, and I'm looking at the ones right now who were on the council with me, that we all agreed that this was going to be a positive for West Haven. Well, 5 to 6 years later, the project is still stalled. The only thing that's going down that avenue is tumbleweeds and high grass. Disappointment after disappointment. 2 meetings ago, I don't know if it came from Bridget Hosky or yourself, Ron, you asked that there be an update. They come to this council to give you the update. But it's not the first time that you ask these people to come before you. There is a reason why they're defiantly not coming to give you an update. And if they're not giving you an update, they're being defiant to the people of the city of West Haven that want answers. There was, at one time, they believed that something was going to happen down there. If you took a poll, I can guarantee you that 80 to 90% people believe that nothing's going down there, and if anything coming down there, it's not going to be positive in the sense that we thought when we were on the city council was going to be down there. I think it's sometime during new business. I think it's you've been patient long enough. You need answers. I know you went down there and you're gonna whatever regarding to blight. That's not the questions you ask. You want concrete answers of what's going down at the Havens. The residents, the people that you represent, want answers to what's going to be, what is the current status of what's going on regarding the Havens. Now, I see you also have on your agenda some ARPA requests here. And I know some of you council made it known during your deliberations and during some of the hearings. We have a huge problem in this city of West Haven. You go, whether it's Allentown, whether it's the center, or whether it's West Shore. Every part of the town has a flooding drainage problem. People are losing their possessions every time we have a heavy rain. Streets are flooded, and yet I'm sure the city's insurance is responding to it, but as you know, the prices go up. People are losing their possessions, and yet I'm looking at this and we're not addressing what is really hurting the people of the city of West Haven. And I'm seeing a few of these, and I'm really curious of who's going to get the contracting bids on some of the ones that you have here. Very curious who's going to get some of these contracting bids and some of the ones you got here. We're tinkering with not the real affecting problem to the residents of the city of West Haven. And I know you all know that we have a serious flooding problem here in West Haven. I think before you even begin on any of that, and I'm surprised this committee, that's not first on their list, is helping out the residents, the many, many residents of this city that are affected by this flooding epidemic that we have here in West Haven. To ignore it is ignoring the safety and well-being of the people that you represent. Thirdly, I listened to the speakers before. You have a lot of questions, and I hope you ask them under new business. A responsive council is a council that serves its constituency. Always remember, you are the legislative branch, and you are our checks and balance. You are the people that we go to. You are the voices for us. I know sometimes, you know, if you're new to the city council, I remember when I was new, you know, it's tough to speak up on certain issues because you don't know the procedures of it. You don't know but you know what? Speak up for your neighbors. I know it's going to take time, but speak up on behalf of your neighbors. There's questions that the people of the city of West Haven have, and I really, really hope that you address them tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ricchio, for your comments. Anyone else from the public like to address the city council for a second time? Anyone from the public like to address the council for a third? Mr. O'Brien.
Thank you. Ed O'Brien, 36 Platt Avenue. I would like to talk about the illegal dump that was discovered a few weeks back. What I hear is that, and I asked the mayor at her meeting, and she was going to get back to me, but I never heard from her, so maybe somebody, one of my council members here can get back to me. Did we pay our city employees, our public work employees, to load those dumpsters? We pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to an outside company to pick up our trash on the sidewalk and deliver it to a waste facility. So if we did that, that is a blatant waste of taxpayer dollars, but if we did, we should also get a refund from that company that we pay. The other thing I'd like to know, maybe finance chair or legislative matters, the dumpsters that were down there, did we have a contract for that? Do we pay for that? I don't know if it's finance or legislative matters, probably legislative matters, but I know we have a contract in the city for dumpsters, and they call them cans, and it's those big 40-yard dumpsters. The company that was in that picture was not the company that we contract with. So was that a contract that didn't go out and we just gave somebody a large contract for dumpsters? I'm going to appeal to any one of you to just get back to me with that. I did do an FOI after I didn't hear anything from the mayor. I don't really think that that's something that I should have to do to find out that answer. It's a simple thing. Did we have a contract with the dumpster company, County Disposal Service, and did our Public Works employees load those dumpsters? As far as the Haven, I think the reason why they're out of touch and the reason why we don't hear anything is because the mayor, in the article, says she's been reaching out to John Donis. He hasn't been with the company. He hasn't been with the company in months. It's something, if you pay attention as the mayor, you would have known that. I mean, economic development and finances are pretty much your job. So just in case you don't know, maybe tomorrow you go in the office and try a different number. He's not with the company anymore, so you're reaching out to the wrong person. The last thing, Councilman Johnstone, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday, and your brother. I love Brent. Brent was a great council person, and we used to sit, and those passed around every meeting. He was great, so I wish him a heavenly happy birthday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for your comments. Anyone else from the public like to address the city council for a second time? Anyone else from the public like to address the city council?
Hey, how you doing? I'm getting to be a regular here, not that I want to be, but 327 Washington Avenue, Tommy Scrappa. Two quick things. Lived in the city 38 years, retired, you all heard that? Yeah. I used to get, if I put something out in front of my house, like a mattress, a TV, tires, even something that's too long, within, I gotta be honest, I don't wanna be a bad guy, within a week, one of the officers would come over. Can Mr. Scrappa come out for a minute? I'd like to show him something. And they'd ask me what that is, and they'd ask me what my intentions are to do with that pile of whatever. I like West Haven for that. The police officer, happened to be a lady, but the police officer looked at me and she goes, well, I think you're the first guy I ever gave a ticket to that's smiling. I said, to tell you the truth, you're doing your job. I was hoping they would take some of the stuff. I didn't realize it, and people don't. They're not doing it to be idiots. But I want to know right now from you guys, but I want you to keep it in mind, how come we're not enforcing that now? Because if you drive up Washington Avenue, you could get a plethora of stuff. Cut tires, bicycles that are all bent up. And I'm surprised the metal guys didn't even take those, but mattresses all over the place, okay? That's one. The second thing is, every night when I drive home, I go by where the funeral homes are. I think it's Church Street and Savin Avenue. There's a hole there that you could lose your car in, okay? I know it's been in the paper twice. When I go outside, if anybody wants to see it, there's a bunch of papers stacked up on the bench downstairs. Look at the one where it says complaining to Miss whatever. It's right there, the address and everything. Nobody's ever fixed it. We got money to fix our roads anymore? I mean, everything could be locked down now, I get it. But I mean, have a tar truck go around with the guys with the shovel and just fill the holes so I don't wreck my car. That's about it today. It was easy, right?
Thank you, Mr. Scrapple, for your comments. Anyone else from the public like to address the city council for a second time? Anyone else from the public like to address the city council for a third time? Anyone else from the public like to address the city council? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. We'll enter into our regular city council meeting. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of April 25, 2022. Is there a motion? Motion by Councilman Bruno. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Garthright. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Who said it?
Second was.
Oh, sorry. Councilwoman O'Connor. I'm new at this. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. If I could ask the clerk, the minutes of the special meeting of May 5th will be held. And if I could ask the clerk to pass out tonight's communications.
We have before us communication A from the tax collector in regards to overpayment refunds for the month of April 2022, which will be filed with tonight's minutes. We have a communication B from Mark Payne, Director of Parks and Recreation, regarding a request for transfer of funds being assigned to the Finance Committee, Chairwoman Hosky. Communication C from Mayor Nancy Rossi in regards to the reappointment of Jeffrey L. Marino, 175 Canton Street, West Haven, to the Ethics Board, effective immediately and expire on June 30th, 2024, being assigned to the Personnel and Civil Service Committee, which will be handled by Councilwoman Hamilton. Communication D from Corporation Counsel Lee Tiernan regarding a resolution defining employee benefits for non-union employees being assigned to the Finance Committee, Chairwoman Hosky. Communication A4 from the chiefs of the city's 3 fire departments regarding ARPA funds request being assigned to council as the whole. Acting chair will be Mr. Fagliani. Communication A5 concerning Mayor's ARPA Committee Community Investment Plan, Neighborhood, Pocket Parks, Open Space, Trees, Gardens, being assigned to council as the whole. Communication A6 concerning Mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan, Recycling and Reuse Center, being assigned to council as a whole. Communication A7 concerning Mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan, Replacement of the windows at City Hall, being assigned to the council as a whole. Communication A8 concerning Mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan regarding the Johnson Senior Center refurbishment, being assigned to the council as a whole. Communication A9 concerning Mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan regarding roof replacement over the Child Development Center, being assigned to council as a whole. And that concludes our communications for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stacy. Before we enter into committee meetings, just a note on the agenda. Council as a whole appears after the Finance Committee, and it also appears under committee reports. We're going to take it, since it's council as a whole, we only need to do that once, so we will do that under committee reports. So we'll enter into committee meetings. The first committee to be heard from is the Finance Committee, Councilwoman Hosky.
Thank you. Your Committee on Finance is in session at 7:59. Committee members present are Councilwoman O'Connor, Councilwoman Akbarali, Councilwoman Hamilton, Councilman Quagliani, and myself acting as chair. I believe Ken Carney is here. I'm just gonna go out of order. Is he in the, hi, Mr. Carney. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. Did you, wait a minute. council as a whole?
What's that?
Did you want me to wait until council as a whole? 'Cause
Up to you.
I can give a quick update on?
That would be fabulous,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak before the council tonight. This will be the second presentation that I've made regarding the ARPA funds. I have a package I put in front of you that has all the information I'd like to quickly go over tonight. And I broke it up by resolutions that you have sent to the ARPA committee. The first one is the sidewalk resolution for $250,000. That's on page 2. And I wanted the council to be aware that the city has already put the sidewalks out to bid. That was done some time ago at a much lower cost, if you will, than what we could get today. So if I ask the finance department to put sidewalks out to bid now, we will spend a lot more money than using the existing contract. There may also be some legalities involved in stepping outside of that contract that we've committed to, if we decide to use another vendor. If you go to page 4, the low vendor was Elm City Materials, and he wasn't just lower, he was considerably lower. And I have on page 5 the second lowest bid, page 6, and page 7. Starting on page 8 through, I think, 21 is the contract that the city signed with Elm City. So if we're able to use these numbers, we can do a lot more work with the funds that you have given us, as opposed to going out to bid today. The number will be a lot higher.
I'd like to ask a question. You can weigh in as well, Mr. Spryer. So, when this went out to bid, and I'm just asking because I've spoken to many friends who are trying to do things, and even my neighbors who want to, do stuff to their driveways, that the cost of supplies have skyrocketed.
That is correct.
Are they, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for making sure I was correct. So how, this was in February and now it's May. Are they still gonna honor it? Because I'm just, I mean, so they are, because candy is going up.
The contract
Everything.
runs through, I think, through November of this year. I can get all the sidewalks done with the funds you've given me before that. I don't see them faulting on the contract, but right now they're honoring it, and I think that's the best route.
Right, and I'm not saying like they would fault on it, but could they back out of it only because they may not make a profit? And I guess I'm just more curious.
We're still awaiting.
To hear back?
A return call from Elm City about quantities that they bid on and quantities we're looking for sidewalks. But as of now, they are honoring the price. They'll make their money off of volume rather than an increase in price. So we're not looking to.
It is great, right, and yeah.
Yeah, and we, if there is a discrepancy in price, we would obviously take that before, the council and let them know that there's a price discrepancy. But as of now, they're honoring that price.
And I'm sure all of the bids, I mean, it's not just now, any bid you go back to, they're gonna say, oh, it's a little bit more. So I was just curious, because I know the price just keeps.
Yeah.
Okay, that was it, thank you.
Now, if you go to page 22, we had sent an email out to the principals of the various schools, and we said, tell us where your deficiencies are on sidewalks. The principals are really the end users, if you will, and we felt they were the best people to make that decision. This is what came back, and these numbers represent the square footage of the proposed sidewalks using the Elm City bid. This does not include parks and other city properties. This is just schools. And we have another wave coming once we figure out the parks and the other city properties.
Another question. I know you looked right at me because you figured I did. So I'm just curious about West Haven High School. So all of the sidewalks are outside of the school's, I'm not sure, what do you call that?
Footprint?
Thank you.
So in the case of West Haven High School, the grant money that we had to build the high school specifically excluded anything on Educational Way, before the
Right,
bridge.
so the sidewalk
Yeah.
around, like Ken Strong and the,
Yeah.
that could all be repaired.
Well, this list represents sidewalks that don't exist right now, not repairs.
Okay,
So if as you know, we installed tennis courts on both sides of Educational Way. We don't have sidewalks serving those courts. These funds would not only service those facilities, but when kids walk to school, instead of walking in the street, Educational Way,
coming from Turks and Captain Thomas Boulevard.
coming from Platt.
Okay, so there's kids that walk from Captain Thomas Boulevard where they do dumping and there's no sidewalks. And I know this because when you take the curve, if they're 3 deep, you literally slam on your brakes because you can't see them.
So the way the resolution is written
Mhm.
is for city-owned properties. Now, since we've done this exercise, we had a short period of time to do it, the attorneys are telling us that we could actually expand it to non-city-owned properties that are servicing the school, and that would be the example you just gave.
Well, I thought, so we don't own that swamp? And maybe we don't.
Well,
Like, do we know the area that I'm talking about?
Since the new high school's been built, we call it a marsh, not a swamp. So, be careful of that.
Okay, so
I'd have
then we
to-
own the marsh? I'm just saying, I'm just very curious, and you can write this down, that I would like that area coming, like, from around that Turks. I think I've asked Public Works to trim back the marsh because it's overgrown into the streets and kids walk around it, and there might not be a lot of traffic, but I would spend $50,000 to save one student's life.
So I will
there's
go
no
back and look at
sidewalks
that.
over there. Okay.
And take a look at it.
I'm gonna stop talking. Anyone else have a question about the sidewalks?
Hi, Ken, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
So I see Allentown got a whopping big, $7,000, for sidewalks. On Carrigan, where would those sidewalks go?
I did not bring, I have a folder for each of these schools. I did not bring that with me tonight. I had Ernie go out, meet with the principals, and they came up with this plan. And
I'd be very curious to know
I can get
where.
back to you on that.
Because there's none on one side on the Carrigan side, going to Carrigan, like from the Boston Post Road up Fairfax. On the right-hand side, there's none. And on the left-hand side, it stops, the sidewalk stops at, right behind Dollar General, and doesn't pick up again until Blake.
So again, if you look at the resolution, it talks about new sidewalks only on city-owned properties. That's what this list represents. We have since found out we can expand it, and I can include areas like that.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Councilwoman?
No.
Oh, you just,
Not
okay.
yet. Not
Thank you,
yet.
Ken.
Okay, moving on to resolution number 2. We have the vac truck. Starting on page 24, Again, we went to the end users, and that's sort of the policy we have. We go to the end user, we get their input, they put together their needs and wants in a spec. This is a list of those needs and wants, and when this goes out to bid from the purchasing department, they will have a final page that says, give us your, options or alternates because you can't get this or that's not available. We think it's going to take between 10 and 12 months to get this truck. From there,
Is there a guess as to how much more it would be than what we thought? Did you have no idea?
no, I think we're in the ballpark, but I won't know until it actually hits the street. And like you talked about earlier, everything's going up kind of crazy. But we're going to, if we don't hit the mark, we'll come back and say we're short this, and we have to, talk about contingency or something. But I won't have that until it comes back to us.
Because I think there's an interest, and I'm not speaking for anybody, but just when you hear in the community, I don't think that we want the truck to do the job. We don't want to find out that, we want to cut the price. I'm only speaking for myself. I would rather take money from somewhere else to get the truck that we need
Yeah.
to have an impact for our residents, like people who've been underwater every time it rains,
This is an important, purchase, obviously, and I think what happens is when the bids come in, there's going to be some moving around of money. Some things will come in low, some things will come in high. We'll come back to you and say, if we want to move ahead with this, we need another $20,000, just making that up. And there'll be other times when I say, we spent all the money, achieved the process and the goal, and we have an extra $20,000.
Right. And I don't know if the rest of the council want to say, but I know, when you go shopping for a car, like, do you want heated seats, a heated steering wheel? I love all that stuff. I just don't want to dumb down the truck and it not be what we really need and think, because that's what we do, right? In the past, we'd buy a car and not get the extended warranty and find out how much money we as a city would have saved if we had made that initial investment.
We don't want to value
yeah.
engineer the truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's the
Yeah.
term for it, thank you. They're
Okay.
shaking their heads.
Moving on to the second to last page, third to last page, I'm sorry. This is the third resolution. So the way we're handling this is your grants writer is going to come up with an application. We are going to advertise heavily in the West Haven Voice, free of charge. I've donated that space for this. So we can reach all of the West Haven agencies who would qualify for this money. Those applications will come in, we'll review them, and make a recommendation. And then the final page, this is an example of a scoring sheet that we used for the 6 architects who submitted their responses to the RFQ. Now, the way we're doing it is each committee member is scoring independently of the other committee members. We're not sitting in a group and talking about it. We're making copies of all the submittals, we're delivering it to them through email or directly to their house, and they come to the meeting with their scores already completed. And that, we think, produces the very best outcome. And in this case, we narrowed it down from 6 to 4 firms. Those firms are not only very diverse, but they are from a small, there are small firms and large firms, and we feel that we can utilize their services based on the size of the project. So we have 4 firms that will be getting a letter this week saying you've been awarded the architectural services on call for projects being run by the ARPA committee.
Does anyone have any questions?
Ken, thanks for coming.
Thank you, sir.
So, I just want to make sure that, I know some of these, are long lead items, so I just want to make sure that you factor in the various approval schedules as you go through, right? So we gave you, like with those last 3 projects, we gave you initial approval to go ahead and, solicit bids and do the planning work, and then come come back to us, similar to what we're gonna do tonight, with the proposals that you have. I just wanna make sure, obviously, you know, you're gonna come back to us for a monetary approval, and then once we do that, anything over 50,000, it may get lower, but for right now, anything over 50,000 needs to be approved by MARB as well. So I wanna just make sure that you kind of factor that into your approval schedule, if you will.
So, all right, so a couple things. Number one, when you guys approve the bucket of money, okay? We have a very capable purchasing agent at this point. We've got Doug working on this. We have an accounting firm coming in, and we have an attorney working with us. If we do our due diligence, and when the bids come in, and then we have to come back here, that's adding a minimum of 2 weeks per project. There's probably 25 projects, that's 50 weeks, you will not make it. When you throw MARB on top of that, you definitely won't make it. You'll be giving money back to the feds. The recycling center takes a year to get a permit from DEEP. That may already be out of the picture, not having that.
Ken, I want to go back to what I said. So, there's no getting around it. I mean, you need to have approval from this body, and then you need to have approval from MARB. MARB is not going to acquiesce and say, oh, well, you got, you know, I'm worried about your timeline, don't worry about us approving it. They're going to approve it. So you're going to need to do that work for them, so it's logical. This could be, you know, you come to us first to make sure that we feel it's comfortable to go to MARB. Now, I'm not, you know, I'm filling in here tonight, but I could tell you that we're not looking to unduly hold up the projects, but yet we're going to darn well make sure that we do our due diligence here on this side of the table. So I recognize that we only meet twice a month, and come July or August, allegedly only once a month. But, I mean, I think we're willing to come in as necessary to make sure that your momentum keeps going. However, that we are comfortable knowing that, okay, we've reviewed the three, kind of like what you have right here, right? You have three bidders, you have the contract. So this kind of is my expectation for, you know, for the, prior to a final approval on these three, you know, kind of what you're doing here tonight. So I don't, you know, I can't be any more clear. I recognize that you guys have a lot to do, and you have professionals on team, and I think, listen, I have no doubt that you will bring back, you know, projects that are well done for this community, but we as the legislative body have to make sure that we're comfortable with that. I'd rather have a project not go forward than have one go forward that I could say that I really didn't look at thoroughly.
So I would suggest that when you want to manage it that way, the far more efficient way to do it is you have council people who are liaisons to the ARPA committee, who attend the meetings and report back to the council. I'll do whatever you want, but I'm telling you that within a week of having these resolutions, I went out, and we're all volunteers. I got all these bids, I met with the end users, we created everything. It was 2 days of work, and it just so happens this meeting fell a few days later. The next time that happens, I may not make this meeting as these projects get larger. And what's gonna happen is if you send us the resolution to spend the money, and before we actually spend it, we have to come back and get another level of permission, you will not spend all the money. Now, we're putting it out to bid through the purchasing ordinance. The ARPA committee does not sign checks, does not sign contracts, has no access to funds. We're facilitating these projects going out to bid, and I anticipate coming back to you every month with a packet like this. But it's gonna, if I have to come back twice a month, which may not be possible, or I have to get permission to spend the money, but really come back again to get permission again, you're not gonna spend all the money. That's the reality of it, especially in this climate of bidding.
Mr. Jackson, you want to shed some light on any of this that maybe we could get? So our resolutions tonight and our resolutions from 2 weeks ago are very clear, that says that we are authorizing you to move forward, conceptualize these projects and send them out to bid and and to develop a program, if it's a program, or a specification, if it's a piece of equipment or a renovation, for you to do that due diligence, to come back to us and say, okay, listen, the the Johnson Community Center roof. Listen, here's the architectural report that says we can't wait any longer. It's in really bad shape, right? Here's the bids that we got from roofers to be able to do this. And your recommendation as an ARPA committee is to award to XYZ roofer for this amount of money because of the deterioration of the roof on the Johnson Community Center. That's really the process that needs to unfold.
All right, here's the issue with that. Number one, when you say that we recommend a roofer, that's completely incorrect. There's a purchasing ordinance in place. Nobody has the authority to recommend anybody. The lowest responsible bidder who meets all of the requirements of the bid gets the job, whether we want that person to get the job or not.
But who awards the job? The purchasing director?
The purchasing director
So, I
does,
mean,
yes.
my mistake, but
Yeah.
I know that he goes to the meeting, so I assume that you're all part of the team, so,
Well,
okay, everything was done properly per our purchasing ordinance, and here's what we recommend to the council.
Right, but the problem is, Ron, that when it comes back, he awards to the lowest responsible bidder. There's no higher level of approval. You take the issue of the sidewalks. I'm here tonight, the sidewalks could have gone out a week ago. We already have a contract, a bid in place. We've lost a week on the sidewalks. If I didn't make it tonight, we would have lost 5 weeks on the sidewalks. On a guy whose materials are going up consistently and may or may not come to the table with the numbers. The sidewalks, he should have a work order on the sidewalks. We got the bid. We can't say no to him. He owns the bid. We've already identified from the end users what sidewalks need to be done. So now I come back here and I get another level of approval to do the sidewalks. We've missed an opportunity and we've added time on to the project. That's all I'm saying.
So the contract is in excess of $50,000, right?
Mhm.
So has that sidewalk contract gone to Marv for approval before we start the work?
No.
Oh, there is.
We haven't, because you haven't appropriated the funds yet, we have not sent it to Mars for approval yet.
So once we appropriate the funds, then it goes to Marv.
Correct.
So, I mean, I don't know, I'm struggling why it's difficult to keep us as part of the process.
So let's run the details down. So if I can't go to MARB, you appropriate the funds, we do the work, I send it to MARB for approval. Okay?
No, Marv has to approve it before you do the work.
They have to
Right.
review, they just have to be able to
Right.
comment and review,
Right.
not approve.
But you're saying come here first, then go to MARB. All I'm telling you is you're adding 2 to 3 weeks per project. When you have all the purchasing information in your purchasing ordinance, you got all of the meetings are taped, your purchasing agent and your finance director has all the information, and I come here once a month and give you updates with the actual paperwork.
Yeah, I'll relinquish, go ahead.
So, with respect, I want to say something really quick, and I just want to make sure that everyone is getting ready to hear me. This sidewalk contract, Lee and Mrs. Spryer, could have been approved 2 weeks, not just, I just want to be sure that we all are an understanding, is that I asked for the list of sidewalks that were going to be done. We were told no. We were told no. So me being please, you don't need to say anything. We were told no, that I didn't need that information.
Who told you no?
Well, the chairman, Massaro, reached out to Ms. Ernie, and he was like, he'd give it to us after we approved it. Now, that is the wrong answer, because the answer should have been, sure, Councilwoman Hosky, let me get you the list. So I, nor anyone on this body, held up the sidewalks at the schools. Unfortunately, who held that up was the person who told me I couldn't have what I asked for, especially when it's a list that's out there and you have it, people probably on your committee have it, and I find it disrespectful, who said that? Utterly disrespectful, in that they want me to know. They find that me not knowing is my fault. They find that me asking, or they don't even know that I've asked, and
I would like to run the time frame so there's a clear understanding here.
No, the clear understanding right now is that this would have been approved 2 weeks ago if we had had the list.
I would like to respond to that. April 26th, we got the resolution. The next day, I sat down with Ernie, who works 3 hours a week. I sent an email out to the administrators, and I sent Ernie out to talk to the administrators. There was no list before April 26th. And until you appropriate the money, no one's doing any work because we don't even know if it's a project. You have limited resources, limited bandwidth. You've got part-time people working, you have volunteers working, and until you say spend the money, no one's going to spend hours and hours making a sidewalk list. I am not aware of a sidewalk list that existed before April 26th because I instructed Ernie based on this resolution to go out and my communication with the principals of the schools.
Well, it probably would have been beneficial if on April 23rd, he said that, but that's not what he said. So I appreciate you doing your timeline, but I have my own. So we cannot, we need to figure this out, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Spryer. We need to figure this out because I am not going to. We have to figure it out, but the residents and their tax dollars, they want transparency. They want to know what sidewalks are being done. They want to know. They don't want to find out that money's being spent or trucks have been rolled or cars have been delivered to this city prior to a funding source, and we are where we are now by anyone. We can all sit here and point fingers, but we're where we are, and we have got to figure it out. If we need to have special meetings, and I don't even think the community knows that the ARPA funding is not under the finance. It's not under my umbrella. It is under the umbrella of the chairman. So I sit here and I can only do what I can do. I have no control over it, even though the community thinks I do. I don't. I'm just a voice.
Thank you for explaining
Oh, you're welcome. It's not under me. So I am sitting here literally begging so that the residents, when they come before us, have the information, and they're like, well, I really agree, Kerrigan should have this, or Councilwoman, can you talk about the sidewalks on West Haven High School where, kids almost get hit? I hear what you're saying, and I wish it was better, but we are in this position because this is where we ended up. So I will come to every special meeting. I don't know if you can come, Ken. Maybe we can all rotate. Maybe sometimes Mr. Jackson can come present the ARPA thing and we can vote on it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the answer is, but the answer can't be that I'm stuck in my spot, I'm digging down roots and I won't move. Because I want to be flexible, but I cannot be held accountable any more than what the residents want me to be. And they really want me to be accountable.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Your
In
message,
plea.
your message tonight and Councilman Quagliani's changes to the resolution last week, that's where we start. Is it going to, might it take more time, as Mr. Kearney said? It might. But it is clearly the will of the city council. And so that is exactly what we're going to do. So in terms of delivering a list of specific sidewalks or zones or regions, because it's not, frankly, it's not useful to say, I'm gonna go this 40-foot length. If the next 40 feet aren't any good, you say, well, why don't we do the whole thing when the sidewalk contractor comes in? And let's have the spec set for spacers, et cetera, to make sure that those sidewalks don't crack in the first cold snap. I think we have a clear understanding of what the will of the council is because we discussed it at some length at the last meeting. And I do not believe that there is any will within the administration or the citizen volunteers to do anything that is outside of the boundaries that have been established.
And I just want to say, so the will of the council, and that is really the will of the residents, and every time, the residents want us to freeze all spending, like, I've gotten inundated with messages on why am I moving money, or why am I allowing spending? They don't even know that what's coming before us isn't allowing spending. You know, like they're still thinking that we're appropriating funds, and we're not. Like, we're literally trying to do this, and I am not trying to be, a mountain that won't move, but I need to hear what people are saying, because they're saying it in so many ways that even sometimes when I think I completely explain myself well, I come to find out that people read and hear what I've said and take it another way. So I need us to understand and figure out a process. So, Mr. Carney, I appreciate everything that you do for the city and the projects. West Haven High School is a testament to your hard work and dedication to excellence. And I appreciate that, and I know that every project you put your hands in, you are going to make it the Taj Mahal. It is going to be fabulous. But our residents are screaming that they want accountability and they want transparency. And I am literally trying to do my best, because my best wasn't good enough the last time.
I'm not fighting with you, and I've
No, I
said
know.
3 times I'd come back as often as you want. Here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want to be blamed at the end of December 24 that the money wasn't all spent, okay? I got MARB you got to go through. I got the extra step with the council. I got procurement issues because you can't get materials, you can't get decent pricing, there's labor issues out there. It's a mess. On the city website, we put the checkbook from MARB. Every single invoice that the committee approves or denies will be in open public. The purchasing agent is running all the bids, and when the lowest responsible bidder comes in, that's the guy, or person, or guy or woman that gets the job. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Does anyone else have it? Councilman Johnstone?
Hi, Ken, thanks for being here. Going back to the bid, I just want some clarification here. So I'm looking at the totals, and yes, obviously, they're astronomical, which we kind of expected. So Elm City won the bid. We are contracted with them, correct, Mr. Spryer?
Yes.
So my question is, throughout this whole process of the sidewalks, if we were to add additional work for more sidewalks, would we get the same price that is honored in this current bid, or would that be a whole separate bid?
Unit price, my expectation is he'll honor the contract.
Okay, so that means, let's just say for perfect example, because I didn't see Pagel School on there, because
Yeah.
obviously there's a lot of houses there, and I know it's city property, what you said before. So that means if for some odd reason we decided beside the soccer fence there to add a sidewalk, we would get the same price of what's currently on this contract?
That would be my expectation.
Okay.
And remember, when they put this out to bid, these were quantities identified for quantity pricing, unit pricing only.
Okay.
When this went out to bid, there was nothing identified as to where sidewalks were going. It was just to come
It
up
was
with
just
unit
based on
price.
the quantity
Unit
of
price.
however far that quantity gets us with the prices, however far
I'm not even
it
sure of
gets
that.
us.
I think it goes beyond that.
Okay.
They just use this as an example of maybe what the minimum quality is.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a contract with this guy at these numbers. I would hope he would honor that.
Gotcha. Thank you. No further questions, Chairman.
Councilman Donovan?
Yeah, thank you. Ken, again, thank you, and thank you, guys. As you are well aware, business as usual has come to a stop, right? We've seen what happened. So what we did, the council agreed on, and with the resolution, everything's, we need to okay everything. That's what the residents also want, as Councilwoman Hosky said. And I also understand your point. But I still feel that there's a way we could do this. We've held special meetings. We've had more special meetings. This is only my second term. I think we've had more special meetings in this term now than we ever had, and those that have been on here longer. I mean, we'll come here 3-4 days a week if we have to, so if you have an item or 2 items, contact the chairman will contact us, and we'll get a meeting. I think that would work, where you don't have to wait 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And in 2 weeks, if you have 3 or 4, perfect, then we can get 3 or 4 maybe done out of that. That was just, one thing I was saying there. The sidewalks now, we were looking at the 250. Now with these, because you learned you can expand, is 250 enough? Or do you
Well,
suggest maybe 300, or you gotta wait to see, come
We
back with us?
we could spend the entire 250.
Right.
My sense is, what I'm hearing from the end users is that the most urgent needs are met within the 250.
Okay.
If you expand it beyond the 250, you've got to take it from something else. That's where we're at.
Okay. That's that one. The vac truck. Everybody was talking about, and we all know how bad this,
Yes.
with the flooding issue. Now, I know the vac truck is the cure-all. But it will, correct me if I'm wrong, it will alleviate some of the flooding, because if we can clean these drains out, that'll open up the drain. I know that the pipes are too small to begin with because they're 100 years old.
Sure.
And we have more residents, but.
The way that it was explained to me
Yep.
is right now you hire a third party, and 2 or 3 city officials have to be present during that process. By owning your own truck, those 2 or 3 city officials will now be in the truck doing the job, and you won't be paying the third party. That's the way it was explained to me.
And the food bank thing, we already discussed, and I think we're all set with that. But, like I said, I think most of us have no problem doing special meetings,
Sure.
and it could be a 24-hour thing for all I know, we can get it done, so.
I don't want to be that bad, but.
That's fine. But I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you. Everyone else? Okay.
I just have a couple questions for you. So I'm new to West Haven, and pretty much everybody here knows I'm probably the one that's only been here for like 5 years. So we've never met, so just pardon me for this. My residents have been really upset, talking about how, you're a volunteer, right?
Mhm.
So in the interest of being transparent for all residents of the city, you said you're a volunteer. That means you're not making any money whatsoever from any of this stuff that's happening with the ARPA committee.
The answer is, I have no salary, I have no budget, I have no reimbursables.
Okay.
Every time I produce one of these, I pay people in my office to put it together, I run it on my own copy machine. So I have never asked for reimbursement.
Okay. So are you or any of your companies placing bids for any of the
No.
ARPA work?
No, first of all, we don't do that kind of work.
Okay.
My company, I've got 68 employees, we're jam-packed with residential work and condo work.
Okay.
We don't typically do that work.
Okay. And do you know if any of I don't know who the other committee members are. Do you know if any of the other committee members are submitting bids to?
No, none of them have construction companies that, no, nothing more. Yeah.
Okay. And also, I'm not sure that this was clarified. I did ask this previously. You weren't here. I was wondering, could we get an ethics form from the people that bid? The bid that you're picking, as to how they know? I think I asked Scott about this.
Yes, and so as part of our general distribution for bidding, there will be an ethics disclosure form as to whether or not anyone has personal or family ties to this city of West Haven.
Okay.
Or taxes, too.
And can the council get a copy of that?
That will stand as a public record, so if the
Okay.
council seeks information,
So we have to.
or if the administration seeks to take a deeper dive, it's a piece of public information.
Okay, so I would have to FOI it then?
No, you don't, no.
I don't have to, okay, all right, okay.
You're a member of the council.
Okay, just making sure, I wasn't sure. That's it, thank
No
you.
FOI.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it, everyone? Thank you, Mr. Carney.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ken.
Mr. Jackson, did you want to discuss the year-to-date? Do you have the year-to-date budget review?
Absolutely. So, I did submit, a few weeks ago, the period 9 budget, report, the period, which is end of March, the period, 10, end of April is under review right now. What we are looking at is, and I like to stay on the conservative side of the aisle, is a budget surplus of $790,000, which, based upon unaudited $7.1 million in FY21, would bring our fund balance to $7 million, which is more than typical for West Haven, but still below standards. Which is why you see in the budget you passed a couple of days ago, we were just together. You know, the addition, the continual addition of a fund balance restoration line. So we are liquid. We are liquid to the point of approximately $45 million. So those of you who remember the bad old days of negative fund balance, that's not where we are now. And so at the last department head meeting, I pushed the department heads to get me the invoices so we can pay them. Because we can pay them. We can pay them double, triple, quadruple based upon our liquidity. So let's keep our good vendors by paying them in a timely fashion. So don't sit on invoices, even if that is something that you might be used to. We are doing well. We got a couple of bogeys to keep an eye on. Police overtime. It's always a bogey. I don't care what town or city you're in. If you have a police department, police overtime is a bogey. So we're keeping an eye on that, but we're doing well. We partially eliminated another huge bogey, which is medical insurance. If you're self-insured, you kind of don't know where you're going to land. But in moving toward a premium-based through the partnership, we pay the premiums and we cure a lot of that. But we still have some folks who are still on the self-insurance side, so that's a bogey. But it's mitigated in many respects by the movement to the partnership plan. So, you know, we know what the cost is. We pay the premium, and we call it a day. So those are the two big bogeys that we're keeping an eye on. But in large measure, we're looking pretty good for a minimum of $790,000 surplus revenue over expenditure. Tax collection has been dynamic we're into the 99s on tax collection, which is our biggest number. State revenue, was set a year ago, and so it's coming in on a good rotation. So our two big revenue streams are doing well, and we had a pretty calm winter, which is another thing that might throw your budget out of whack if you have 5 or 6 major snowstorms, which we did not have. So the expense side is good, the revenue side is good, and we're looking at a positive result of operations.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Jackson? Go ahead. No.
I'm just curious, I know that we had, I think it was, what was it, 27, we have 27,000 vendors, and I think the audit, the Cohen-Resnick audit said there were only 5,000 that had correct EIN numbers. Do you know if we've updated any of those yet?
We had a meeting with our vendor last Friday, sort of an organizational meeting.
Okay.
Part of this process, and I think we have 11 meetings left, is to determine a way to go through the vendors. So, for example, if a vendor changed their billing address, we might create a new vendor.
Okay.
And so that's how you get to 27,000
Okay.
vendors. And so instead of creating a new vendor, we simply update the record for the old vendor, and then everything follows through. So we are acutely aware of that, because if someone's been working here for 30 years and they move every 5 years, suddenly they have 6 records. And so the poor person trying to create the requisition on that says, oh, this looks like a good address, but it might not be the right address. So it creates sort of a cycle of corrections, et cetera. And so it is important for us to clean up that vendor list. And our purchasing agent and our finance department understand that this is a top-tier issue and are working on a strategy.
So they haven't
to get it
started
done.
it yet then? If they're just
Well,
strategizing?
I did one.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's not started.
Okay.
But the concept, the understanding as to how this has to happen is absolutely ingrained in our purchasing and finance teams.
Okay, all right. And do you have any idea of maybe if any of the EIN numbers that were verified or as being used, were they correct with the state, do you know?
I do not know.
Okay.
I can get back to
Okay,
you
that would be
with
great.
any information. I'm not sure that we pinged everything that we have
Okay.
in terms of EINs versus the state.
Okay.
And and it might be, that is a difficult and labor-intensive effort. Not to say it's not worth it. But in terms of the validity of the EINs, I think once I feel like our first thrust is to reduce the total number and then clean up the good vendors that we have. So it might be a tertiary effort, but right now with the numbers we have, with limited information in the system, we have to cull it. We have to cull it first, because then we can have a reasonable number of data items that we can say, okay, so what do we do with them?
Okay, all right, thank you.
You had a question?
Yes. Hi. You said the $790,000 was good for West Haven, but not necessarily good for other towns. What should our goal be? You know, a town with our demographics and in size.
Our ultimate goal should be 15% of our operating budget.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Hi, Scott. Maybe Rick can help you with this one. Do we have an update on the P card situation?
We do. Our application is complete. We have received, actually, Rick, you wanna come up here? I believe that we have received an initial list of users, and we will size out by department what their limit is.
Yeah, so we're just awaiting the final list of departments and members of each department that will be getting a P card. We will then work with Webster Bank and Elon, who is the credit manager of the fund, to train myself and anyone Scott does, his designee for the finance department on the reconciliation side of the P card. But we have been approved for our process. We just need to identify the cards. But I would say that we could have cards in hand by the end of next week.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Scott, just a follow-up on the P card. So who is the ultimate responsible party for the P card? The one individual that's going to be responsible for this rollout and this program?
The rollout, the responsibility falls to Mr. Spryer. Ultimately, the holders of the card are responsible for the card, which will then, in terms of review and payment, will go through Mr. Spryer and myself.
So their supervisor will review it on a monthly basis, right? Whatever expenditures the employee that has the card has, and then it goes to your office for payment where all these
Yes, and Mr. Spryer will have access to the transactional detail. So if you go to Home Depot and buy some lumber, Mr. Spryer will be able to see that. The person who bought the lumber will have to attest that, yes, I got this lumber and it was good. The supervisor will have to attest that, yes, Joey Jojo, which is my name for any made-up person, Joey Jojo has attested that the lumber was the specifications necessary. Then it will come to our side of the transom where we approve the payment of such.
And we'll review to make sure that we're not skirting the bidding requirement by
That
making
is
15 trips to Home Depot.
Absolutely. You
Right.
you $2.50
Right.
a million times
Right.
skirts the bidding process.
So we will probably set the credit limit on each card, maximum $5,000. That's per month, so they will not be able to, unless written request is in for an increase in credit, we will not increase anything over 5,000.
And, Mr. Jackson, the Allentown Fire Department, what's their year-end projection for them? Do you know offhand?
I do not know offhand. It is in the positive, but I can't tell you how much. I can find that out.
And how about the sewer department? Are they flush?
I see what you did there.
Sorry.
Yes. Sewer
They're to the
and
good as well.
Allentown are to the good.
Okay, great.
And they are projected to be to the good in the next budget based upon all circumstances.
Thank you.
Which is good because, for them to build up a fund balance for what a lean year that may come in down the line, this is the time to do it because we're doing well financially, even though organizationally there are challenges.
And speaking of those, where are we with the audit? For the audit for 2021?
The audit, we have an RFP that is out. And I think it closes on Friday. Friday. And so hopefully at that point, we've gotten questions from 2 potential entities, and we're answering those questions. But, I mean, this is an unusual situation. When I worked at OPM, I got the audits. I've never seen an auditing firm cancel an engagement 4.5 months after it was due. So it is definitely unusual. But with Mr. Spreyer's dutiful assistance, we're able to immediately turn around an RFP, put it out for the minimum required by the city, and we've gotten inquiries, which is a good thing, and we will close it on Friday and hopefully be able to report to you at the next meeting of the city council that we have, that we will be presenting to you a potential replacement.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jar. We haven't had a MARB meeting. When is the next one?
May 17th.
May 17th, yes. Thursday, right? Is that a Thursday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You are good for now.
Thank you.
Lee, do we have an update about the police pension study? I think we're probably going on year 15.
Yes, I got their bill, but I did not get their report, so I will hopefully
So
get
is
the
there
report
any way
tomorrow.
to find out what's the, ETA? If when
ETA, well, once we have the report, we'll circle back with the union. We have a kind of idea what we think what the proposal would be.
I mean, what's the,
The goals are, one.
Right.
The goals are, one, to make 401K officers as close to equal in terms of disability, if they are disabled, as close to equal as the pension officers. Now, people can talk about it, whether or not disabled, what happens with pension is there's really no incentive if a police officer under the current pension system says, I'm disabled, if they have some records, there's no financial incentive to push back. So it won't be a perfect system anyway, but if an officer has an injury such that they can't work as an officer, the system, which will be a combination probably of annuity and pension, will make them as whole as their brethren who have the pension. That's the first goal, because injured people do no harm. The second goal is to create because we don't think we can afford, nor do we need to do a full pension system, but to create a minimum pension benefit that is not tied to the stock market or whatever, so that all officers would have a minimum benefit. They wouldn't lose their 401K, they wouldn't lose Social Security, and those would only be added to their system. So they would have all officers would have some form of defined benefit. And we think, and we've seen that with other departments, and we think that would be a way to make the officer morale go up and a way that they would be protected. So we're looking for numbers that would create that, and those are the numbers we'd probably come back and say, this is what we think we can afford, and hopefully they'll cover the two bases I described.
So every time I bring this up, I feel like residents asking about the Haven. I feel that the update is always the same, and I'm not gonna lie and say I understand it, because I honestly don't. I mean, how many months does it take a company that you're paying to do a job to do it? And if they sent us a bill, what in God's name was the bill for? Because I don't have what it is I asked them to do yet. And I am so, please give me a minute. I am so tired of hearing that, like, what is the go live date? Like, I couldn't possibly, like, I am so sick and tired of them not even giving us, is it July of 2022? Will we hear something December? Will it be not until next summer? Because I am tired of asking about it. Not as tired as the police officers are not having it, but I just don't understand how it appears to me and like they're incompetent. Like, why can't you run the numbers? How many months does it take? Like, I don't know. What don't I know?
Yeah, so this process was run initially through finance. So I'm going to take it over at this point. I'm going to follow up on the bill, which went to the finance department. I don't think there'll be delays any further. But maybe the entity doing it was not babysat enough. So they will be now, and they won't
I mean,
get paid.
I can babysit them.
You could, but
We can assign it to me, because I'll call somebody.
if I thought that would work, I would generously delegate
No,
that
I
to you.
know,
I'd
I'm
be happy
just-
to delegate it.
I'm just so, I am just over I'm over it. Like, I'm over it. And I know it's not you, but how dare they send us a bill and not have a product?
Well, they
in
may
an
have a
envelope?
product, but they may have sent it to the wrong place.
Oh, okay, so they might be
And I-
waiting to
I
give
will
us the
follow up on it.
product.
I didn't get the bill till
We
today.
have a surplus, we can pay it. Give it to Mr. Jackson. He
No,
just told us
that's
it's
not how I
like 700
process
and
bills.
something thousand.
So that won't happen.
All right, I appreciate you. I don't even know what I'm doing. So communication B, Mark Payne, Director of Park and Recreation, I'd like to bring this motion out favorably. Thank you, Councilwoman. A second? Thank you, Councilwoman. Mr. Payne, would you like to come up before us and explain what it is that you are accomplishing?
The area we're looking to refurbish is down at Old Grove Park. It's the area that is bounded by about Oak Street and Alschler Boulevard, the walkway, and the sand on the beach. It's a parcel that's a little over an acre in size. It was formerly a grove of trees. The trees that were in the grove were battered during the 2 hurricanes and became increasingly dangerous. We had limbs and trees coming down every time we had a thunderstorm or a heavy wind. The trees needed to come down. The trees were actually almost entirely ailanthus and locust, which are 2 non-native invasive species, which are not desirable down there. When the trees were taken down, we were followed up. The trees came down in the off-season, at some point during the cooler weather. The following spring was one of the coolest, wettest, longest springs that we had seen, and just about every weed seed that was in that parcel germinated. So now we went from dangerous trees to a situation where we had a lot of other invasive species like onions and mugwort that were growing in there. We got together with Public Works. Councilman Donovan's been engaged in this. Councilwoman O'Connor's been engaged in this. We've been collaborating with Parks and Recreation, as well as the Land Trust and the Beautification Committee to come up with a plan to replant the parcel. And what we looked at was, given we have had such success at Sandy Point using native and indigenous species which provide for the environment, whether it's by flowers or seed or plant material for egg laying, for birds, for insects, we really transformed the place, and we were recognized by Audubon as a town for the effort. So looking at the parcel down at the Grove, that's not only our crown jewel and probably the single most highly utilized piece of real estate by the public in the city of West Haven for public engagement, it's also the home of the Eco Camp. And when the eco camp started, and that parcel was, actually before the eco camp was started, when that parcel was redeveloped in around 1987, 88 during the Guerra administration, there were a number of desirable plants that were put in there. They sort of, over time, fell by the wayside. So what we are looking to do is, first of all, create something that is beautiful to look at, aesthetically pleasing. That's something for everyone. You don't need to know exactly what plants are in this parcel to go by and recognize the beauty of nature and something that is enjoyable to look at. That's something for everyone. Again, we're looking to use perennial plants, native species that are drought tolerant, that don't necessarily need to be fed, so that it's environmentally sound. We would like to utilize a selection of trees and shrubs and appropriate grasses and flowers so that we have the environmental yield, we have the aesthetics, and then we also have as much of a degree of resilience as we can. Depending on what types of plants you use, some of them weather storms and wind and water erosion very, very well, and others do not. So we really want to do very, very smart planting here. And again, with the eco camp being right there, it'll be immediately utilized by the kids for that purpose. The community's down there all summer. It is a place with amenities and a lot of parking, can be utilized by our school system as well as anyone else who would want to come in and utilize the space educationally. So we're sort of at an impasse now. Along with the land trust, this started as a grant writing endeavor, looking for funding for a design. We cannot pursue funding for the project until we have a viable design to demonstrate, along with a reasonable cost associated with that. So at this point, we, along with the land trust, wrote a grant that our application was not funded. So at that point, I started to look at our budget and say, what can we do so that we don't lose another planting season? So we have a number of programs which were either canceled or scaled down due to COVID. The money's not going to be used, and the swim team has left the Department of Recreation, which is a real success story on their part. They're a very large, highly competitive swim team now. There was a time that they needed the rec department to help them stand on their own 2 feet. That time is long gone. So they left this year, and again, that money was funded in this year's budget, removed from next year's budget. So we looked at it and said that we could either turn the money back over to the general fund, in which case it simply goes to the general fund with no yield to the public after it was already collected, or we could try to pursue the funding of site analysis and design so that we could then actually pursue funding for the project, whether it's through grant initiatives, state or federal legislators going to bat for us and getting earmarks. It could be done through the capital.
Yeah, so this money, I just want to make sure, is to be able to put out,
Ultimately, to come up with a design for the space
but
with.
we have to put out a bid, right?
Oh, well, I mean.
Well, I just want to make sure, you don't understand where we're at, so.
Respectfully, Councilwoman Hosky, we've had discussion, this is a work in progress, and I've had discussion with Mr. Spryer, and as well as a few people here, as well as a few people on the other side of the fence. And it's coming together. So the very first thing I would do if the money is transferred is call Rick at 901 and sit down and pull the core items out of the proposals that I actually had were information that we utilized for the grant writing. I don't want you to think that I've really gone out ahead here. We were able to get some input from a few companies, which enabled us to write the grant to Circa. And that's where that started from. Those were probably have January dates on them. Fast forward to the one with the March date where I was looking to see, okay, we didn't get the whole thing. Can we bite off a little piece? Can we do something manageable before the end of the budget year? With this, we may in fact be able to come up with an actual site design that has costs associated with it, which would allow us to then go and pursue funding for the full project.
No, and I understand that. I just wanted it to be on the record so that the community knows that the money is, when we say site design, I want to make sure those at home realize that we are putting it out to bid so that.
So I'm really good with the beaches and the natural settings, and I fully intend on relying heavily upon the finance department and the procurement as a core piece of this
No, and I
this
appreciate
operation.
that. Did you have anything you wanted to say, Mr. Sprier? Okay.
Mark did a good job of putting the budget request, the transfer request together. It gives us a baseline as to where we're looking at, so we know that the transfer amount will cover a design and site analysis based off of just this report here.
Yeah,
So we will
that's
send it out to bid,
exciting.
but we know that we've got we've got a baseline budget set already, so this should be the most that we have to spend right here.
That's exciting. Does anyone have any open for discussion? You can just, you're not in the finance committee, just give me a second.
I am on the finance committee.
Oh, you are. He was raising his hand too.
Okay.
Okay.
That's why I put it down.
Give me 1 second, go ahead.
Ricky, I guess this question's for you. I'm just concerned because it's toward the end of the fiscal year. Will we be able to get a bid in on time and utilize the money?
Yeah, there's, I mean, we've got, what, 10 weeks left of the fiscal year, or 8?
I mean, because I want the
7 weeks of
transfer
the
to
fiscal
go
year.
through.
Yeah, no,
I don't want to do all this work and have it
The good thing
wasted.
is that, we've got a company that already basically did a site analysis for us. We're gonna bid that out. We've got, a 2-week together to put a site analysis bid together is not a hard process to do, so, we should have the money back, the bids back within 2 to 3 weeks, and be able to make a decision by then and cover the money, and get the work started at least, and cover the money.
Awesome, that's what I wanted, to get it started
Yes,
as soon as possible.
absolutely.
Thank you, thank you.
Anyone else in finance? Councilman Donovan?
Nope.
You don't have.
That's
she asked
exactly
you
what I
asked
was
for.
gonna make sure
Anyone
that
else?
we got it in by then.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. And I'm going to hold communication D to give the council time to look at all the information in the event they have any changes. And your finance committee is closed at 9:12.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm
Thank you,
excited.
Councilwoman Hosky. Next committee is the Personnel and Civil Services Committee. Councilwoman Hamilton.
Time is now 9:12, and the Committee on Personnel and Civil Services is in session. Members present are Councilperson Quagliani, Bruno, O'Connor, and Hosky, and myself as chair. We have before us Communication C. From Mayor Nancy Rossi, regards to consider the reappointment of Jeffrey L. Marino on 175 Canton Street, West Haven, to the Ethics Board, effective immediately, and to expire on June 30th, 2024. I'd like to bring this out favorably. Is there a motion? So moved. Who's? Okay, Councilman Bruno's first, okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Thank you. I've worked with Jeffrey for the last 4 or 5 years in the CDA on the Block Grant Association. He's very thorough. He asks all the right questions, and he's not afraid of a battle. I think he would be a wonderful person to keep on the Ethics Committee. I trust him, and I think he'll do a good job.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I just want to add too, I agree with you, Councilwoman O'Connor. I know him personally, and I also think that he'll be a, asset on that committee if we keep him there. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And the Committee on Personnel and Civil Services closes at 9:15. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hamilton. Next committee is the Public Lands Committee, Councilman Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman. The time is now 9:15. The Committee on Public Lands is now in session. Members present are, committee members present are Councilwoman O'Connor, Councilman Quagliani, Councilman Bruno, Councilwoman Hamilton, and myself acting as chair. We have before us tonight updates on all the public lands that were sold. I requested from, sold in the progress of it from October 2021, and I see that we have some even earlier than that, which is awesome. I'd like to bring this out favorably for a discussion. Do I hear a second? At this time, we'll have a second, sorry.
Second.
Second. And Lee, at this time, would you and Hunter, might as well get yourself up there too, Hunter. Nice job, by the way, thank you.
Yeah, just on the earlier stuff, that's mostly for the council members who haven't been here.
Yeah.
What I was trying to do is a couple things there, and there's probably a couple missing, but just establish a timeline that with the council's insistence and with efforts through my office and people like Hunter. I think you could say it's pretty much started in 2019, where it was looking at ways to take land that was unproductive, and if the city could have an influence on it, to try to make that land more productive. So that's why you see that list, and some of the newer members wouldn't have been familiar with some of the land listed. And it's really another opportunity to make people aware. The way we've tried to organize this is to favor adjoining property owners, especially adjoining businesses, because if we have a business who has who's been in the city, worked with the city, they know about the city, they want to stay, they want to expand, we want to encourage that. So when we can, we'll do that. So I don't think you have as much question on some of the older ones. So I'll let Hunter talk about the three ones that I think you're most interested in, which is the three schools. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for having the opportunity to let us give some updates here. I'll just read through the updates that we have on the three schools that are all in various stages of kind of the closing process. First, the former Style School properties. We've made some encouraging progress so far moving forward with this development. However, it's a very large project with an estimated $50+ million of investment into the site, many moving parts. So as a result, it has a long timeline, and the due diligence period isn't set to end until the end of March 2023, which is when the property will officially transfer ownership. But we have a long way to go between now and then, but we're not just waiting on the developer in this case. We have actually been meeting with them weekly, and there are a good amount of recent updates that we'd like to share with you. For one, the city received the hazardous building materials report at the end of April, and Doug Coulter has started the process of coordinating with the developer to apply for remediation funding. Two, we connected the developer with Senator Maroney, as well as representatives from various state agencies who have been very supportive in directing the developer to initiatives and opportunities to support the development there. And then we're coordinating to get the survey completed by the end of May, and at that point, the developer will actually come down to the site with their architect and begin promoting the development as a part of their larger development plan by the end of next month. And their goal is to have the concept plans for the development submitted for review through the West Havens Planning Board by September. So overall, things are moving forward encouragingly with that development. It's very slow, but it's a big development. So moving on to the Thompson School properties, 165 Richard Street, 179 Richard Street, and 70 Hall Street. So these developers are moving forward fairly quickly. Their due diligence period ends June 15th. They have the option to extend based on different factors, but it seems like they're trying to move forward full steam ahead on all accounts. They've already put down a $125,000 deposit up front, which West Haven will receive the other half of when the deal closes. And the most recent updates are as follows. They pretty significantly are choosing to move forward with remediation on their own rather than waiting for the remediation funding from the state to kind of expedite the process, and so they don't have to wait for all of the grant to go through and then the funding to be awarded and everything else. They're doing some fencing and cleaning up of the building because they want to prevent further break-ins and vandalism, which I know is a big deal for a lot of people. And the developers have also been very enthusiastic in other potential developments in West Haven. We've actually been discussing some different opportunities with them and putting them in touch with some other developers in the city to have some conversations there. And there's only a few remaining items left to take care of before we close on that. So that hopefully will be coming to a close sometime in the next few meetings.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they cost up $125,000.
And then the last one is the Blake School. Shoreline Wellness Center, is already an established business in downtown West Haven. They really want to move into their new location, kind of expand their operations, find some different ways to kind of like integrate their new programs into this expanded space. So they're also trying to move forward as fast as possible. It's anticipated that they will close sometime in the next few months. They have some zoning kind of things to go through between now and then that we're currently coordinating with them. But their most recent update is that they've received one of 3 proposals from an architecture firm and they've done a walkthrough with the contractor, and I think that's the biggest next step between the city and Shoreline Wellness Center is just coordinating on zoning, which we are currently working on.
Thank you. Yeah, I see on here, it says some additional land sales may be missing, that you're talking about not from Blake, you're talking about from the list, right?
Tried to put it together, I would have to do a little more research.
Yeah, no, that's okay, just a couple questions I'll have.
There isn't a significant one, I don't think.
Where's it? Yeah, well, first of all, Hunter, thank you very much for that.
Let me just add one other thing,
Yep.
not that it would come up, and maybe it's not all that important. But obviously, all 3 schools have names attached to them, Thompson School, Blake School, and Stiles. Stiles supposedly has a time capsule in addition to that. And we will try to commit to either when school opens or just before school opens, making sure that all the materials that honor each individual are out of the school and are put in a place where the honoring of those individuals continues. And we're going to target either the day school opens or just before the school opens. And obviously, we'll communicate that to you when that occurs.
Great. Couple of, obviously, yeah, there were a couple missing on here. Anderson Glass, right? That's a done
That's a
deal?
good one. Yeah.
Right?
So, yes, so he took the piece behind there, and he's been operating. I assume he's gonna continue to operate there. he is still looking to potentially expand even further. We just haven't found a site that, he wants to stay in West Haven, we just haven't found a site that would work for him. You know, he is gonna have increased work from the Housing Authority renovations of both Surfside and Crete. So, hopefully his footprint continues, and we will try to accommodate him for potentially even bigger site. That would remain a commercial site if he departs.
Right, and he was supposed to put a fence up on that property that we
Yeah,
purchased, right? He hasn't done that yet.
we want to coordinate that with the new developer, because, you know, there are some aesthetics and also working out exactly what the developer for the school, you know, would actually work best for them. So we will, that'll happen, I don't know if it'll happen before your next meeting, but it will happen before your next 2 meetings, without question.
The only other question I have before I'll open it up to the committee is, any updates with the brewery?
Well, I mean, everything continues to move forward as it's supposed to. You know, they're trying to line up some zoning. They've met with inland wetlands. We've ordered a resurvey of the site to make sure we know what we're dealing with. We're gonna roll out some ideas which are not new. They might be new to some of the newer council members, but are not new to the council generally, which was a monetization of parking. So we're probably gonna coordinate a monetization of parking throughout the city, not just for the brewery. But that coordinates so that when the brewery opens, we're in a position where you're facilitating a business that can operate. But yes, they are pretty much on schedule. We were hoping for a little quicker zoning date, but some of it is, you know, some stuff happens on the brewery side, some stuff happens on our side, but everything's moving forward. We are at the place where we would expect to be and hoping to be, and, you know, it continues to move forward. So I think you'll see some evidence of it throughout the summer.
Anybody on the, yes, Councilwoman Hamilton?
So 26 Harold Street, it was sold a little while ago. When do we expect to see movement on it? It looks the same to me.
No, I put that on specifically with you, Councilor Hamilton, in mind, because I did a drive-by myself in putting this together, and I was not gonna not include it just because he hasn't done anything. So yes, we're gonna have to,
Push it.
I think at this point, we'll set him with warnings. He'll have 10 days. We'll set him with warnings on blight pines. And there is a reversion in the deed, so if we don't get any activity, we can take it back. So I don't know what the problem is. We'll have to reach out to him. And if not, he's going to have some penalties, which usually makes people operate faster. But yeah, I did a drive-by, and I would say the only thing that's happened, activity on that property that I can discern, is I took my foreclosure sign down in the last 4 months. So I will get on him.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the committee? Any questions? Oh, sorry.
Thanks,
Councilman
Gary.
Bruno?
Lee, thank you for coming before us tonight, but as you heard, we need an update. We need them to come before us. We need to know what's going on at the Havens.
Oh, you mean the Haven?
I mean exactly that.
Okay, so I reached out to the Simon Group, which is going to control the development. I reached out to the general counsel in Indianapolis on Friday. He coordinated with
Lee, we heard tonight that we're not even reaching out to the right people.
no, what you heard tonight is that a person, which happens in businesses, a person who we were utilizing no longer works there. But I didn't reach out to that person on Friday. I didn't know that, but I didn't reach out to that person. I reached out to the general counsel of the Simon Group, and he reached out to Matt Armstrong. And Matt Armstrong, we reached out to again today so that we can coordinate what's going forward. And if, you know, we're walking hand in hand with the penalty phase if we don't see progress this week. So I'm hoping we have a meeting tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then Wednesday.
Okay, so what's the chances of getting them before us next meeting? to explain what's going on, or what they're gonna do, or where we're at.
I'd have to hear that from Mr. Gordon. You have to remember, it is a privately owned piece of property. It is a little unusual to have people that have a privately owned piece of property be ordered to be before the city council, but I do believe that the way we are coaxing them, I was happy to see that Matt Armstrong responded on Saturday after my email on Friday. So I think that headquarters in Indianapolis is taking notice. They did not react. I think part of the problem was, it is possible that the individual we were dealing with was not as effective for our project than others. I don't know. But I'm sure they're going to either identify a new person, or I'm going to be dealing with the headquarters generally. So I think it's positive. We've always had a positive relationship with Matt Armstrong. He's generally been responsive when we can get him to the site to see things. When we had fires, when we had people sleeping there,
So is the
getting
city
security.
ready to turn the heat up to figure out what we're gonna do here?
Yeah, I'm done. There is no reason for delay. I could give the Haven credit before, a few months ago, that the delays were not anything to do with them. You could always argue COVID is, but COVID is where it's at. And, I was in Boston this weekend. Is Boston where it was in 2019? Nope. But it's active, and it's moving, and people are doing stuff, and that includes in the retail sector. So I expect to have some movement, or if not movement, then we'll use every tool that we have to coax them to the place where we want them to be, which is moving the project forward. So that would include blight fines, that would include demoing sites. I know people say, well, if you demo the site, you lose the tax benefit. We have to do things to coax them to continue the project, and those buildings are going to get demoed anyway to do the project. So, and then at a certain point, if they keep delaying, they'd lose the grant. So Matt Armstrong is, like I said, we've never had a bad circumstance with Matt Armstrong. He's a straight shooter. He's been responsive when we've had other difficulties, needs, issues. The zoning enforcement person is ready to go. She knows what she's doing. She knows how she's going to approach it. And then, if we have buildings that can be deemed unsafe, like I say, we'll tear them down and lien the property or send them a bill or whatever. But like I say, he sent an email Friday. I got a response Saturday, or I didn't get a response.
Yeah,
But
that's
the
great.
mayor got a response.
That's great, but the people have been waiting for a really long time.
They have.
And I'd like to see the city.
But like I say, 7 years of that delay, I don't think you can necessarily blame the Haven. Now you can.
I think there's a lot of people that would like to develop that land at this time, so we need to turn the heat up, but thank you very much.
Okay.
You all set, Councilman?
No, can I ask,
Yeah, go right ahead.
thank you, I haven't said too much with the floor here. Mr. Jackson?
Sir.
Quick question, it's a little bit unrelated, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. Where does this money land on the sale of these properties at the city? Is that why we're 700 grand to the good? Like, where do these, okay, so where's the,
No,
this money land?
this is not incorporated.
I'm asking anyways.
If everything went to the good, if suddenly they started developing, it would land in our general revenue account.
Thank you, that's what I needed to know, Mr. Jackson. Thank you. Nothing else.
Sure. Anybody else from the committee?
Lee, since you brought up demolition, it reminded me of a public comment someone made last month. They said the reason the brewery's not here is because we have to demolish the conference center. Just for the record, was there any validity to that statement?
The brewery folks viewed the conference center and made their proposal and have a vision as to what they want the brewery to look like. I suppose they could keep some of the, they would have that option, but the way the deal will be designed, it will be a ground lease.
Wait.
And they'll be able to.
You misunderstood the question. I know they have to demolish it, but they made
They
it
don't have
sound
to.
like the city had to demolish it. Was there any validity to that? When the person got up, they said, the reason the brewery's not here is because you haven't demolished the conference center yet.
Yeah, no, that hasn't been any part of any discussion.
Because I
Yeah, no.
realized with their concept, it's gonna look totally different. That I realized.
Yeah, no, they would want to control demolition. If they control demolition, it'll be less expensive than if we control it. And, I mean, any demolition in the city, we don't do demolition ourselves. I mean, we always have to hire it out anyway, so, no, I don't remember any discussion along those lines.
Thank you. That was it.
But the building, I mean, demolishing the building, just, if anybody's, the building needs a ton of work, like, it's not a crazy idea that you would want to demo that building. It would be much more expensive to renovate.
Anybody else from the committee? I will open it up to the whole council. Councilwoman Tucker?
You mentioned a few minutes ago that there was a grant and that they would run the risk of losing the grant. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
So they sought some state aid, and the state decided that $5 million would be appropriate, a $5 million grant for clearing, I had to make sure I use the word clearing, the property from Water Street to the water and along Elm Street was allowed, but the main part of the grant, the majority of the grant, will be used for widening and the transportation improvements necessary to accommodate this type of activity. And part of the delays that people get angry about is they had to apply for a transportation permit for this high-use process, which if you go down Long Wharf and you see Jordan's Furniture, they had to apply for the permit. If you see IKEA, they had to apply for the permit. So all your high-end retail users have to get this permit. And the permit envisions, as you might imagine, perfectly logical for anybody who drives up Elm Street after 3 o'clock, before 7 on almost any given weekday, you got to widen that road. I mean, there's no way around it. So they are given money to assist them in widening the road. But in addition, the project envisions a 1.5 linear public park along the water. So since that is a public purpose, the widening of the road would not serve just the retail establishment, it would serve the public. The park would serve the public. So it was envisioned that the grant hugging these public parts of the parcel would work. It did not envision demolishing the other side of Water Street, which does not necessarily have a public use that you could hug or embrace that adjoins.
And how long do they have before they lose the grant?
If they don't start at least the transportation improvements probably in the next 18 months, I mean, the money would be repurposed for some other need, hopefully a need that would be here in West Haven, but it would be some other need. No, we're hoping to get a schedule on when they're pouring footings, to be perfectly candid with you. And given that the Fed is raising interest rates, it is a more opportune time to create the tax district than it was a year ago and float revenue bonds. So I still think, they paid a lobbyist to do that. They went to a lot of work to get the tax district. There is no evidence. The only retail project the Simon Group has backed out of in the last 5 years. During COVID, they doubled down on retail. They bought JCPenney, they bought Brooks Brothers, they bought a lot of other places. They cut a deal with Amazon for any of their big box stores that couldn't be filled. The only project they've backed out of is in Indianapolis, actually. But they were a small minority owner, and they didn't have control, and they didn't like that they didn't have control. The city had control. So we don't micromanage them, as one of the complaints is. So they're really, this is the field they're in. They're not in any other field. So there really is no reason to think that they're not going to move forward. And it could be that, they had an employee who wasn't moving the ball properly, who's no longer there.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Councilman?
Real quick, in regards to the havens, but this is more of a question for Scott. When we turn up the heat, and I hope to point out Councilman Bruno's point, and I hope we do turn the thermostat all the way up, where do those blight fines go? Because I'm sure the public's going to be asking that question.
They go into, there's a fee account in the budget. They will go there.
Thank you all set. That's it.
Anyone else on the council have any questions? No? All set? Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you, Hunter. And with that, the Committee on Public Lands is now closed at 9:40.
Thank you, Councilman Donovan. Unfinished business, we do not have any currently. The council will convene as a whole for committee reports. If the clerk could read Communication A into the record.
Communication A from the tax collector in regards to overpayment refunds for the month of April 2022, which will be filed with tonight's minutes.
Thank you, Stacy. Now we'll have the committees report out to the council. The first committee is the Finance Committee, Councilwoman Hosky.
Thank you, Chairman. To the Honorable City Council of the City of West Haven, your Committee on Finance, to whom was referred the matter of interdepartment line item transfer, reports that the committee met on the 9th day of May 2022 to consider said matter. It is unanimous opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Resolved, the City Council of the City of West Haven hereby approves the following interdepartment line item transfers. Line item 15202-553-51140, swim team coach, decreased by $31,705. Line item 15202-553-51040, aquatic program instructors, decreased by $5,000. Line item 15202-050-51170, supervisors and instructors, decreased by $5,000. Line item 15202-050-5054320, payments to outside agencies, increased by $41,705.
Councilwoman Hosky's brought forward Communication B from Mark Payne, Director of Parks and Recreation, regarding the request for transfer of funds as was read into the record. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Galignano. Councilwoman O'Connor, is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And
And
oh, I'm sorry.
communication, whatever, D is being held, and that is all that we have for finance.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. Okay, we'll go into council as a whole. Communication A4 from the chiefs of the city's 3 fire departments regarding ARPA fund request. That communication will be held this evening. Communication A5 concerning the mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan, Neighborhood Pocket Parks, Open Space, Trees, and Gardens. I'll read the resolution, and then we can determine if we have a motion in a second, just so we understand what it is. Whereas the City Council has fiscal responsibility for the appropriation of ARPA funds under Section 4 of the City Charter entitled Supplemental Appropriation, whereas the mayor, her administration, and the impaneled Civilian Review Committee have executive duties for administering ARPA funds pursuant to the City Charter and relevant purchasing ordinance of the City of West Haven. Whereas the mayor desires to have an indication from the council on which projects they choose to fund and to what extent. Whereas the council requires more detailed plans and work scope to make formal appropriations for the projects proposed in the mayor's ARPA plan presented to the council. Resolved that the city council has determined that conceptual plans be further developed for the following projects and associated dollar amounts: neighborhood pocket parks and open space, $1 million. The mayor shall solicit project proposals from city departments, city organizations, and park affinity groups. Further resolved that a proposal from Grants Coordinator Doug Coulter on behalf of the tree warden Leo Kelly to match a state grant of $10,000 for planting of public trees, training of volunteers, and capacity building activities for the tree department is approved in the amount of $10,000. for the parks and open space portion of this fund. Further resolved that Mayor Nancy Rossi, as mayor of the city of West Haven, may expend funds for architectural, engineering, and other planning services to more fully develop the projects selected above. Further resolved that Mayor Nancy Rossi will develop a program narrative and budget for the programs listed above and present such plans to the city council for formal funds appropriation for specific projects as listed before any project implementation. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Motion.
Councilman Donovan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilwoman O'Connor. Is there any discussion? I don't see any discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Are there any abstentions? Councilwoman Gartray and Councilman Johnstone abstain. Motion carries. Communication A6 concerning the Mayor's Community Investment Plan Recycling and Reuse Center. Whereas the city is in receipt of certain American Rescue Plan Act, federal coronavirus stimulus funds, herein referred to as ARPA funds, whereas the city council has fiscal responsibility for the appropriation of ARPA funds under Section 4 of the city charter entitled Supplemental Appropriation, whereas the mayor, her administration, and in the impaneled Civilian Review Committee have executive duties for administering ARPA funds pursuant to the city charter and relevant purchasing ordinance of the city of West Haven, whereas the mayor decides to have an indication from the council on which projects they choose to fund and to what extent. Whereas the council requires more detailed plans and work scope to make formal appropriations for the projects proposed in the mayor's ARPA plan presented to the council. Resolved that the city councils determine that conceptual plans be further developed for the following projects and associated dollar amounts. Recycling and Reuse Center, $1 million. The mayor shall develop plans and budgets for a recycling and reuse transfer station center for dry municipal solid waste and city-generated construction debris and roadway materials to be located on city-owned land or acquired land. Further resolved that Mayor Rossi, Mayor of West Haven, may expend funds for architectural, engineering, and other planning services to more fully develop the projects selected below. Further resolved, Mayor Nancy Rossi will develop a program narrative and budget for the programs listed above and present such plans to the city council for formal funds appropriation for these specific projects prior to project implementation. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Bruno. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Hamilton. Is there any discussion? Councilman Donovan?
Yeah, no, this is the one that I believe the chairman of the ARPA committee, Ken Carney, was saying that this might already be out of time. Is that what I understood? So if that's the case, I mean, I guess we could still say yes and go forward with it, but if it runs out of time, we can obviously use that money for other items, that is what I mean. So we just don't.
Agreed. All of these resolutions are just giving them the
Permission.
ability to go do their due diligence.
Okay.
Seek more information, put items out to bid, and to report back to the council on their findings.
That's it. Thanks.
Anyone else have any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Communication A7 concerning the mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan, replacement windows, City Hall, whereas the city is in receipt of certain American Rescue Plan Act federal coronavirus stimulus funds, hereinafter referred to as ARPA funds, whereas the City Council has fiscal responsibility for the appropriation of ARPA funds under Section 4 of the City Council entitled Supplemental Appropriation, whereas the mayor, her administration, and the impaneled Civilian Review Committee have executive duties for administering ARPA funds pursuant to the city charter and relevant purchasing ordinances of the City of West Haven, whereas the mayor desires to have an indication from the council on which projects they choose to fund and to what extent. Whereas the council requires more detailed plans and work scope to make formal appropriations for the projects proposed in the mayor's ARPA plan presented to the council. Resolved that the city council has determined that conceptual plans be further developed for the following projects and associated dollar amounts. Municipal building improvements, $650,000. The mayor shall develop plans and budgets and bid work for the replacement of windows at City Hall, 355 Main Street. Further resolved that the mayor, Nancy Rossi, may expend funds for architectural, engineering, and other planning services to fully develop the projects selected above pursuant to Chapter 42 Purchasing Procedures of the Code of the City of West Haven. Further resolved, Nancy R. Rossi, Mayor of the City of West Haven, will develop a program narrative and budget for the programs listed above and present such plans to the City Council for formal fund appropriation for these specific projects prior to project implementation. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Bruno. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman O'Connor. Is there any discussion? Councilman Donovan.
Yeah, I'm not sure, putting $650 to replace windows is something that the residents want. I think we can use that money elsewhere. I'm not sure I'm in favor of this spending myself. Just putting that out there. That's it.
Okay, just again, we're not approving any money
Right,
this
right.
evening. The project has come back to us for the 3 bids, the scope of work, and it could be $450, it could be $650, it could be $850, and we may determine that there are other pressing priority projects that the council wants to
Yeah,
move forward on.
I get that. I was just saying, I don't know if it's even worth us spending time getting the bids and everything. Just my opinion, though.
Okay.
Sorry.
Anything
I'm all
else?
set. No,
Okay.
I'm all set.
Councilman Johnstone, and then Councilwoman.
So the first thing that comes to mind when I think of this is the growing theme of complaints we've been getting for not this administration, but the last 2-3 decades. City Hall first, taxpayers second. So it sends a bad message, number one. Number two, City Hall to me reminds me of my first car, which was a 1989 Toyota Corolla. I could put fancy wheels on it, I could put a sound system in it, but at the end of the day, it's still worth only $500, and at some point, for everyone who's ever owned a car, you have to move on, and at some point, it may not be this council, but it's gonna have to happen, in the next 5 to 10 years. We're gonna have to address the issue of what are we gonna do with this building that's decaying below our feet? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilman Tucker?
I also struggle with the use of funds for this purpose, the ARPA funds for this purpose. So I also question the use of the funds for this reason.
Councilman Garrett?
I have to agree with Councilman Johnstone, Councilwoman Tucker. I don't think this is a good use of ARPA funds at all.
Councilman Bruno?
Thank you. You know, I would have to disagree. I believe that our energy costs are through the roof. They say that there's drafts coming through the building in certain offices that you can't even control. So I would say that I would disagree with that. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hosky?
So I would say, I don't really have an opinion yet because we don't really know. I mean, in lieu of just the $650,000 on windows, when I think about energy and sustainability and the future, and as Councilman said, we've talked about the building. I think a lot needs to happen. It's not the windows, it's the doors, it's all of it. I would maybe want to broaden the scope of it and not just say the windows, but look at it and say, how efficient is it? How sustainable? You know, there's just those little cell things you heat things with. I don't know. It's not my cup of tea. But I'm not the expert, and I hear what Councilman Donovan is saying as far as wasting the time. It's not my time. It's the committee's time. It's what they're supposed to do. So I don't think there's any harm in making a decision from power and knowledge unless somebody, and I say this respectfully, unless somebody here is that professional. you know, it might be beneficial. And one thing Ken Carney and that team seems to be able to do is to build things and get a good price. So I would be in favor of obtaining the information to make a decision based on a professional's recommendation. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. Any other discussion? Councilman Galagnano?
How about an energy audit on the building?
Is that an amendment?
I, okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Is that what we're, so that's fine, I'll make an amendment, and Councilwoman Hosky seconded. Absolutely.
So the amendment is that an energy efficiency review be conducted as part of this due diligence. Is that accurate?
That would be accurate. How's
Okay,
that?
That's the motion and the second. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All right, no discussion on the amendment.
That's not true.
All right, discussion, Councilwoman Hosky.
Well, because I always have a thought. I mean, if we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do our due diligence, and we're doing this, are we doing this work down at the Noble Street School, right? We're gonna put on a roof. Are we doing windows down there?
Not that I know of.
No, okay, so I take back my thought. We just might, I was thinking it would just be holistic. We're gonna have them do an energy audit, come in and do it on all the, city buildings. But it's this one, it's Noble Street. I'm good.
Any other discussion on the amendment, Councilman Bruno?
Mr. Chairman, I'll look into that if you're okay with it. I believe there was an energy audit done on this building, and that's how they come up with the window situation, but I'll confirm.
So they'll include that as part.
Correct.
Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, so a yes means we want to include some type of report to the council about energy efficiency in this building. A no means we don't. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? One opposed, Council, that's right. Any abstentions? Okay, the amendment passes by majority. So now we'll go back to the original communication. It would be that City Council determined that conceptual plans be further developed for the following projects and associated dollar amounts: municipal building improvements, $650,000. The mayor shall develop plans and budgets and bid work for the replacement of windows at City Hall, 355 Main Street, to include in that due diligence is an energy efficiency study of this building particular to this. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Guys are making me work. Okay. Communication AA concerning Mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan, Johnson Community Center refurbishment. Whereas the city is in receipt of certain American Rescue Plan Act, federal coronavirus stimulus funds here, and after referred to as ARPA funds, whereas the City Council has fiscal responsibility for the appropriation of ARPA funds under Section 4 of City Charter entitled Supplemental Appropriation, whereas the mayor, her administration, and the impaneled Civilian Review Committee have executive duties for administering ARPA funds pursuant to the City Charter and relative purchasing ordinances of the City of West Haven, whereas the mayor desires to have an indication from the council on which projects they choose to fund and to what extent. Whereas the council requires more detailed plans and work scope to make formal appropriations for the projects proposed in the mayor's ARPA plan presented to the council, resolved that the city council has determined that conceptual plans be further developed for the following projects and associated dollar amounts: Johnson Senior Center refurbishment, $640,000. The mayor will provide architect's report on the current roof condition, bidding documents, and construction schedule to the city council for formal funds appropriation and approval prior to project implementation. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion it.
Motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Hosky, second by Councilman Donovan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Okay, and communication A9 concerning the mayor's ARPA Community Investment Plan roof replacement over Child Development Center. Whereas the city is in receipt of certain American Rescue Plan Act federal coronavirus stimulus funds, hereinafter referred to as ARPA funds, whereas the city council has fiscal responsibility for the appropriation of ARPA funds under Section 4 of the city charter entitled Supplemental Appropriation, whereas the mayor, her administration, and impaneled civilian review committee have executive duties for administering ARPA funds pursuant to the city charter and relevant purchasing ordinances of the city of West Haven. Whereas the mayor desires to have an indication from the council on which projects they choose to fund and to what extent, whereas the council requires more detailed plans and work scope to make formal appropriations for the projects proposed in the mayor's ARPA plan presented to the council, resolved that the city council has determined that conceptual plans be further developed for the following projects and associated dollar amounts: municipal building improvements, don't know how much, stand by, $360,000. The mayor shall develop plans and bid work to replace the lower section of the roof serving the Child Development Center at 201 Noble Street. Further resolved that Nancy Rossi, the mayor of the city of West Haven, may expend funds for architectural, engineering, and other planning services to more fully develop the projects selected above, subject to Chapter 42 purchasing procedures of the Code of the City of West Haven. Further resolved, the mayor, Nancy R. Rossi, will develop a program narrative and budget for the programs listed above and present such plans to the city council for formal funds appropriation for these specific projects before project implementation. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Councilman Galignano, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilwoman Akbarelli, I'm new here. Akbarelli and Councilwoman O'Connor. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And that concludes our council as a whole. Next committee to be heard from is the Personnel and Civil Services Committee. Councilwoman Hamilton.
To the Honorable City Council of the City of West Haven, your Committee on Personnel and Civil Service, to whom was referred the matter of reappointment of Jeffrey L. Marino of 175 Canton Street to the Ethics Board. Reports that the committee met on the 9th day of May 2022 to consider said matter. It is the unanimous opinion of the committee that the following motion be presented. Resolved, the City Council of the City of West Haven hereby approves the appointment of Jeffrey L. Marino, 175 Canton Street, West Haven, Connecticut, 06516, to the Ethics Board. This appointment would be effective immediately and expire on June 30th, 2024.
Councilwoman Hamilton has brought forward Communication C from Mayor Nancy Rossi in regards to the consideration of a reappointment of Jeffrey L. Moreno, 175 Canton Street, West Haven, to the Ethics Board effective immediately and to expire on June 30, 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilwoman O'Connor. Councilman Galignano. Is there any discussion? Councilman Donovan.
Yes, I met Jeffrey Moreno probably 3.5, 4 years ago, and very impressed with his work ethic himself. He goes by facts. He doesn't just go by rumors. He needs to know facts before he ever comes to some kind of a decision. He's very thorough in what he does, everything I've seen him do, so I am absolutely in favor of supporting him. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Donovan. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Adoption of ordinances previously presented, we have none currently. Council liaison reports, I see no hands. New business, does anyone have any new business? Seeing none, we are at that moment. I take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, motion by Councilman Galagano, second by the birthday boy, I think. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.